once again. To make it short, as as previous speakers were telling, do we have transition in Moldova? We don't have it, actually, but we are in the very early stage of making a comprehensive center for transition of patients with epilepsy. I would like to give you some insight about epileptology service in Moldova. It is something specific for this region where epilepsy during a long time was considered a mental disease, and patients with epilepsy were treated and diagnosed and followed up at psychiatrists. That was mainly because psychiatrists were the only specialists that have the right to prescribe reimbursed anti-epileptic drugs. So the patients who were followed up or diagnosed at a neurologist or neuropediatrician sooner or later go to psychiatrists, and psychiatrist files were not transmitted to other specialists. So there was the big gap about what happens with these patients, and very difficult to follow up. Moldova also is not a very big country, and we have about 3.5 million inhabitants from official sources, but the migration is pretty huge and not very well documented, so it is about 2.9 million. That brings us to the statistical data that, for example, in 2015, there was, according to National Bureau of Statistics, about incidence of 19 at 100,000 population, and it is rising between 46 to 60,000 patients. Not very big numbers comparing to other countries, but very important part of population and of patients needing help and assistance. The epileptology service started in Moldova in 1994 when with support of Professor on an initiative of Professor Academician Stanislav Gropa, and with support of Peter Wolf, who was at the time the secretary of ELA. Was established the Moldavian branch of ELA, and it follows several national conferences with international participation and forming of interest of neurologists, neuropediatricians, and allied health providers in epileptology. We have very nice collaboration, just to name some of them. Of course, there were many with University of Geneva, and especially in neurophysiology with Margita Sik. Also with Innsbruck University Hospital, where I was lucky to go to a fellowship and was very much enthusiastic about what can be done in epileptology, and meet with Professor Bau and Eugen Trinka, and now the collaboration is continuing with Eugen Trinka being in Salzburg. Thank you very much, coming to Moldova several times and contributing to creating a national curricula for epileptology that is included for residents, for medical doctors as continuing medical education, and as refreshment courses. And also we have collaboration with UK, with Germany, and with other countries. Here are just several centers where my colleagues who are now in National Epileptology Center went for shorter, longer periods of time. You see the hospitals in Switzerland, France, Austria, and Germany. My younger colleagues, they had the privilege to attend the East European courses on epileptology that contributed to the knowledge, and to courses organized by Dana Krajo, and then the one in Bulgaria. You see here the team that attended this East European course. So that was the preamble of creating an epileptology service, and as most of you face these problems of transition, people with epilepsy from childhood to adulthood, or transition from one specialist to another, we lobbied very much creation of a comprehensive epileptology center. These efforts were summarized at the end of 2011, when the Minister of Health from Moldova issued an order about creation of epileptology service in Moldova, and creation of National Epileptology Center. But that was the official decision, but the center actually, we were consulting just as neurologists in neurology ward and in emergency city hospital patients with epilepsy, but the center with its comprehensive structure start to work from the end of 1914. And the main issue was, for us, a problem was transferring these patients from psychiatrists to neurologists, because it was a process that contributed to stigmatization and drop out of these patients from medical system, because they were afraid to go to specialists, they were afraid to go to psychiatrists because they are not mad, and it was the opportunity to bring them into this service. In National Epileptology Center, we have neurologists for consulting adult patients, we have child neurologists, we have a psychiatrist, and we have a clinician psychologist. From the models of transition, I can say that we are at the very beginning of a center where we can do this consulting of teenagers by a mixture of specialists from the age of 14 years to 14 to 18 years, and till the age of 12 years, patients are seen by neuropediatricians. Well, because we have the legal aspects with creation of epileptology service, we have a basis of integrated as a part of healthcare systems, and we provide to patients assistance of a multidisciplinary team. As the structure of National Epileptology Center, we have the methodical and organizational department, and we have the ambition to establish a registry, not yet approved, for patients with epilepsy, as we see it like a point to keep all the data about these patients and to facilitate transition. We are based on Emergency City Hospital, or Institute of Medical Emergencies, and we have outpatient clinic where we consult adults and children. We have hospital department for adults, 20 beds in Institute of Medical Emergencies, and also we have the Institute of Child Neurology that is providing the hospitalization for child patients. We have a ward of clinical neurophysiology, and there we can do the routine EEG. We have also the possibility for TMS, and we have high density EEG that is planned to be a next step, maybe for a pre-surgical evaluation of patients with structural epilepsy. About neurosurgery of epilepsy, we don't have it yet. We just have neurosurgery for structural epilepsies for adult patients, and we have a possibility for vascular surgery. Here is the Institute of Emergency Medicine, where is the National Epileptology Center. And What we can do in our center, we give consulting for patients by adult neurologists. We have consulting child neurologists. We have evaluation and testing of neuropsychologist clinician. We have a psychiatrist, and we have a psychiatrist with competence for child patients. And we can perform routine video EEG monitoring. We have at the moment we have 2 beds of video EEG monitoring, including high density EEG. We have possibility to make neuroimaging in our hospital, like CT 24 hours and MRI of 1.5 Tesla. We also have the possibility to evaluate neuroimaging by MRI 3 Tesla with a special protocol of epilepsy, but not in our hospital. We are referring it to a private clinic that we have established a reimbursement for this. Also, we can test the levels of anti-epileptic drugs, especially in patients with pharmacoresistant epilepsy. We can do a neurosurgical consult, having a neurosurgical ward and specialists, neurosurgeon with interest and with competence in epilepsy. And also we can refer and admit patients, adult patients on epileptology ward that have 20 beds, and we can't admit child patients, but we are referring them to 2 centers, 2 big hospitals in Chisinau. One is dealing with Chisinau, the capital of Moldova, and the area around Chisinau, and has 20 beds. And another one is dealing with the whole region of Moldova. It is a regional hospital. In our work, we have in 2017 elaborate 2 clinical protocols, national clinical protocols on epilepsy in adults and on status epilepticus in adults. There are also 3 national protocols on child neurology that were elaborated before 2008 and have to be revised. They are pointed on febrile seizures, neonatal seizures, and cerebral palsy. And if we are talking levels of assistance to patients with epilepsy, we have it on the private level, ambulatory to general practitioner, that is mainly dealing with prophylaxis and observation of patients. Also, general practitioners have the right to prescribe reimbursed anti-epileptic drugs that are, of course, when they have a referral from a specialist, from a neurologist. And also, general practitioner is referring patients to other specialists when it's needed. On secondary level, we have specialized ambulatory consulting of neuropediatricians and adult neurologists, and also in hospital treatment in regional hospitals. And we have the National Epileptology Center and Institute of Mother and Child for Kids, where is based the University Department of Pediatrician treatment, and the neuropediatrician is a component part of it. And we have a couple of specialists that have good knowledge in epileptology. Here are some pictures of the possibilities. Well, the consulting of epileptologists. Also, we have the testing of clinician psychologists. We have 2 routine video EEG stationary with possibility also of monitoring, short-term monitoring. And we also have EEG in intensive care unit and in neurological intensive care unit. We have a video EEG monitoring unit where we can do overnight video EEG monitoring or long-term monitoring, and including in this on this unit we can do high-density EEG with localization or source localization. And as I mentioned, the epileptology ward, 20 beds, intensive care unit, where we can do also EEG in patients with suspected non-convulsive status epilepticus. And that is, we have a long, I was listening to previous speakers, we have a long road ahead of us. So we are very young at the very beginning, but we need, of course, some protocols and implementing some checklists also for our specialists, so to make it easier for patients with epilepsy and for caregivers to get very good specialized assistance. Thank you for attention.
If we come to Moldavia, because it's fun. You have everything.
Well, the big problem is, I think that you faced it also. The big problem is the lack of specialists and lack of nurses. We can't have the privilege to have nurses because we don't have enough nurses in our hospital. It is also economical. It's a very big exodus. So in Romania, doctors are here. Nurses, every year the college is preparing nurses, but about more than half are not belonging to the system according to the count of the system.
I hate to tell you that we have a lot of nurses from Eastern Europe. We are hugely worried about staffing of the NHS with regard to possibilities after Brexit. So you might get them all back. I have no idea.
So, every part of the world have some problems.
Yeah, exactly.
So, thank you again for the invitation and going out from the very nice situation in Moldova. Not as Amy Winehouse sang Back to Black, but I really will present no modalities for transition, but actually our problems and why transition at present seems not realistic in my country. First, I said 3 days ago to our junior neurosurgeon that I will go on a transition workshop in Romania. And he said, we don't need transition because Bulgaria is disappearing and population gets older. So we're probably in 30 years we will not. Yeah. And as you see, there is explanation why many people think that under the communism it was better and Bulgaria was more than 9 million, now we are less than 7. So situation really is not good because children are less and people are leaving, so we lost more than 2 million people, Bulgarians. But we should move on. And how is the situation with the healthcare? Approximately 350 euros are spent per capita yearly, and it's close to the situation in Romania, of course, very different with what is done in Germany or France. And the insurance actually is financed by these compulsory taxes, 8% of the monthly wage. And there is a huge amount of out-of-pocket payments because many substantial restrictions. We have one monopolist player, the national, so-called national health insurance company. What about the epilepsy patient? They are foreseen by GP and then immediately sent to neurologist. Majority of those patients go to university clinic and then they stay in the neurology clinic because this is the way to obtain a free EEG because there are restrictions for outpatient EEG, and also to have a neuroimaging. And of course, up to now, the neuroimaging consists of CT. When we want to do an MRI, we have to ask a request from the national health insurance company and to say, for example, that not the child is having a refractory epilepsy, but there is a observation, there is a differential diagnosis tumor, so it must seem more tragically in order to obtain this MRI. The hospital stay is restricted only to once per month. Even if you have an epileptic status, the next time you have to be admitted in the hospital, it must be with another diagnosis, not with the same diagnosis. And this stay is covered by, from this year, with only 200 euro. So of course, all the neurology clinic do the standard TG and only blood exam, because everything else is hotel stay. They have to pay for these other expenses. And what is strange, I asked Dragoslav how many neurologists, because Masha told us that only 8 in Bulgaria. At the last neurology congress I was present, it was 2015. I asked the big boss of neurology and he told me that there are 600 in Bulgaria, which is very strange, but they are not interested in epilepsy, although they are managing epileptic patients, and we have probably 22 child neurologists, I'm not sure. So children, there is only recommendation that they must be seen and managed by child neurology, but it's possible, as in UK, to be also treated and managed and followed by neurologists. So probably this is the better situation. And for example, my patients do not have problem because after 18, I have both licenses. I'm also adult neurologist. I take care of them. But of course, there are strange situations and they must be organized very difficult with all these patients with Dravet or other difficult symptoms, severe epilepsies, constant phone calls between the pediatrician or pediatric neurologist and adult neurologist, so there is really no transition. So this is what I said. And about the children with epilepsy, drug-resistant epilepsy, of course they are admitted only once per month. Usually we prolong this hospital stay only with permission of the hospital and only if the children need steroids or ACTH, which is not available, or some change. So because of this coverage of only 200 euros, there is only one hospital and only one center performing long-term video EEG. This is our center, because it's not profitable for other hospitals. And moreover, none of these new anti-epileptic are available, but also we have problems with the old. So I'm always asking Dana or Oana or even Florentina to buy me phenobarbital and to send me for my patients. So this is the way how drug-resistant epilepsy are managed. The GPs, they are just following the instruction of the neurologist, and they prescribe 2 drugs, valproate and carbamazepine, and all the drugs have to be prescribed by neurologists. So, and this is for our patient the main problem, because pediatric neurologists or pediatrician epileptologists cannot prescribe the drugs, which are reimbursed after the age of 18. Epileptologists do exist, or at least they pretend to be, so we pretend. And usually these are neurologists around about 100 with the certificate. They can prescribe for children and adults. Of course, specialized nurses do not exist, and there is only one psychologist with expertise in epilepsy. She is working with me, and of course, the input from the organization on the government, the parliament, payers, or the national care insurance company, it's minimal. My voice is actually without any effect when I try to organize something. At least this course was mentioned here. But when we want to change something, at least to include some drugs in the essential list, we always have to ask the patient organization or parental organization. Of course, they are much more fruitful. And now I hope really on 11th of February to have a common conference, press conference with this organization, and also to change that this is a way how we have to move, also to organizing the transition. The social status, of course, is very difficult, and all this pension and support for the social assistance, because the money, as you see, is very minimal. So the maximum of close to 500 euros only with children with ICP, epilepsy, intellectual disability, etc., etc. And also, this has to be proven every second year in order to have this money. which is incredible and very difficult for the children, and must be very, very difficult also for adults without any family support later in life. And of course, the epilepsy stigma, and there are major restrictions for going to school, to kindergartens, and also for employment. So these are two of the major papers. So this must be a purposeful and planned process that address all these needs of young people, adolescents with epilepsy. This does not exist in Bulgaria, but I hope you understood why this is not the major problem, because we are missing many drugs, essential drugs. We have only one center with video EEG. And usually this transition is a transfer organ like this. The parents take the child, go to a neurologist and ask, could you be so kind to take my child, so our child, and to care. And of course, there are neurologists dealing with other diseases, they do not like epilepsy. So they have to go from one neurologist to another. Or this neurologist will take care, but will call you every day to ask what to do. It happened, I told Helen, with 3 of my patients with Dravet, so they call me every time they get in status or they need something to ask, how is the situation with your children? And these are not my children, these are Bulgarian patients, Bulgarian children. So something must happen. This is not imaginable in my country, so I hope also this appointment between 3 and 12 per year, it's incredible, so I don't believe. And it cannot be organized in such a multidisciplinary team, but I really hope that at least in our hospital, when we have several neurologists, I work there, we have neurosurgeons, we have neuropsychologists, we could create some small programs as in Kuopio, at least for some of the patients, probably for the more difficult. So probably, and I believe at least in my country, this could work, that this period is the time to rethink the diagnosis. And as Eugen said, not only to do the genetic re-investigation or first investigation, but for MRI. Because I saw, at least in the last year, 3 adult patients with refractory epilepsy. They came to our epilepsy surgery center. They have been operated successfully, and they never had an MRI. So they said, we are 22 years old and we are coming from another city, but we only had CT. And 2 of them had LIAD, so DNET or ganglioglioma. The other one was classical febrile convulsion, hippocampal sclerosis. They are seizure-free. So probably this is the only thing we could do in Bulgaria to organize this transition like this, that this patient could be re-evaluated just in terms of neuroimaging, probably genetic also, but this is very expensive still in Bulgaria. So this is what Bulgaria is most famous with, the rosal, the Bulgarian rose. Of course, you see that the situation is not rosa in Bulgaria. Still is a stigma and is not regarded a treatable condition. So the biggest neurology boss, Eugen knows very well, said, epilepsy patients, they are futureless consumers, so, and this is the situation, how they are regarded. But where there is life, there is hope, and I really think that part of European Union, Bulgaria is, and could probably approach, not in near future, but slowly the other countries who develop this model. Thank you very much. Please.
Hello again. I don't have any PowerPoint because our meeting was supposed to talk about the transition in epilepsy, so we didn't start yet, but we hope today will be a start for us. I can say that we started in a way because in Bucharest we have the chance to have good epileptologists in the adult area, so we are glad that we are working in Bucharest because it's easier for us. In a way, we started to transfer as a transition, let's say, because when we think to make the transfer to the adults, we always talk with the neurologist, and we have the chance to have an opportunity to know that our patient will be good. But as you all talked today, it's important to start earlier, and we didn't start yet to do that. I'm not sure that we will have the opportunity to have these transition clinics because we don't have the legislation. It's not on our side yet. Maybe the people from the Ministry of Health will help us, because that's why I asked you in the morning about that. I was sure that they will be, in a way, they want to support us, but we have to do it maybe from the part of our society, some papers to tell them that's our need and we want to start maybe 16 years old, let's not say 12, because I have a goal in my life. Sometimes it's useful to start small and think big. So we have to start small and propose them 16 years old, and maybe we can show them that it's possible to do it started with 12 years old. So I will let Ioana, she's our colleague from the...
To you, it's saying that, well, as usually happens, the usual suspects are not in the room. So what we are, the people that we are here, we talk to each other, we make transition quite well. We have all implemented steps done between us because we are friends and we work together. But the problem is at the large scale of the country, where this process is very, very painful, and doctors don't communicate to each other, and the education is very low in the field of epilepsy, especially in the adult neurologist settings, because and everything starts with the reimbursement process, because hospitals are not interested in epilepsy departments. So long-term video EEG monitoring is very poorly reimbursed. We are all laboratory.
Yes.
I mean, we are reimbursed as electrophysiology lab, not as clinical departments. So my hospital is not so interested, even if we have the epilepsy surgery program, and we have so many research. So they usually, are really reluctant to develop this field. And then starting from here, as the job market in medicine in Romania is still tough, so even if we don't have so many doctors, they don't want to have very many doctors. They don't have positions for our newly trained young people that could develop the field, so they have to go somewhere to apply their knowledge. So it's a vicious circle. Then if it's not, epileptology knowledge is not so, it's not so premium for our system. They don't look very much for these doctors. Then it's education for the large part of neurologists. Then goes very hard, and from here is difficult to implement this communication, because it's a different level of education. So we hope with this meeting to develop a national network. The people that we are here, we can try to make more neurologists interested in the issue of epilepsy, and then to try to talk to each other in our departments, in different parts of the country, in the villages,
Yes,
because
we have to have a
the
network,
problem is
some kind of a protocol. It's not something that
outside
you do
the
with
big
your friends.
cities and outside the big centers. In Bucharest works well, and we are all here and we make pictures. But then in, I don't know, in Tulcea or in Petești, or in how things are going and how much interested are the adult neurologists which have epilepsy, down to their, first is stroke, and then multiple sclerosis and Parkinson, and epilepsy is the last, and they had maybe one lecture during the residency, and so they know about being two types of seizures, absent seizures and grand mal, and that's all. And if you add levetiracetam, everything is fine, and then if it doesn't work, you go to Bucharest. So hope we change this perception, and we work so much during the last year, and we thank to ILE for the support and for the national chapter increasing the education, accelerating.
We try to get as many neurologists to the courses we
yes.
can get. So, but it's a matter of collaboration and also of having protocols that then it will be much more easy for them to follow some. For the people who are not working in centers, in epilepsy centers, it will be much more easy.
And of course, we have many questions, but you said in the afternoon,
Yeah.
so wait for
The whole afternoon for discussions.
Okay, to have a good startup. Thank you.
So thank you very much. Have a very short discussion with the press. So I will invite some people to be in a formal presidium now, and we.
Political signals how we support the professional activities at European and international level. But I will say more on the press conference.
So
in English or Romanian?
I think Romanian will be, and we invite also the big guys. Please join us. We will translate the questions and the answers because I think it's important to have your direction. So we would like to invite you to the presidium, which was and we will then invite the press inside. So. Societățile profesionale implicate în îngrijirea epilepsiei. Sunt președinta Societății Române împotriva epilepsiei, mă numesc Dana Craiu, sunt medic neurolog pediatru și împreună cu Societatea de Neurologie din România, Societatea Română de Neurologie Pediatrică și Societatea de Electrofiziologie am pornit acest meeting pentru a rezolva o problemă care reprezintă un minus în multe țări din Europa și din lume, și România este una dintre ele, problema tranziției de la copil la adult. Și avem invitați din țările din jur, experți în epileptologie din Croația, din Serbia, din Bulgaria, dar și colegi care sunt lideri ai epileptologiei mondiale și europene, profesorul Eugen Trinca, care este președintele Ligii Internaționale împotriva Epilepsiei Europa, doamna profesor Helen Cross, care este membră a Bordului Internațional de Epileptologie și, de asemenea, colegi din Finlanda. Alături de noi sunt membri importanți ai Ministerului Sănătății, pe care îi rugăm să se alăture în prezidiu nouă, domnul secretar de stat Brădățan, dar și domnul europarlamentar Cristian Bușoi, care este un avocat al epilepsiei, este membru al European Epilepsy Alliance Europe, care se ocupă de discutarea în forurile politice europene a problemelor epilepsiei. Doamna doctor Mândruță, din partea Societății de Neurologie din România, doamna doctor Raluca Teleanu, neurolog pediatru care face epileptologie, doamna doctor Carmen Burloiu, președinta Societății Române de Neurologie Pediatrică. Și așteptăm întrebările dumneavoastră. Noi putem să vă povestim multe, discutăm încă de dimineață despre tranziție, dar sigur că am vrea să vă lăsăm să ne întrebați.
Ce anume e nevoie în România să se facă tranziție?
Problema tranziției este o problemă în toată lumea. Trecerea de la serviciile de neurologie pediatrică la serviciile de adult este dificilă în toate bolile cronice. Epilepsia este una dintre ele. Și mulți dintre pacienții noștri care pleacă din zona de îngrijire neuropediatrică se întorc la noi pentru că nu au poate aceeași colaborare pe care o aveau la copii cu toată familia, de fapt, așa cum se obișnuiește la neurologia pediatrică, să îngrijim toată familia, nu numai copilul. Se întorc la noi poate pentru că au niște legături mai bune, poate pentru că au impresia că noi cunoaștem pacientul mai bine, poate pentru că au impresia că în felul acesta vor putea să aibă o continuitate a îngrijirilor medicale mai bună. Ne luptăm să formăm niște protocoale de tranziție pentru a ușura acest proces de tranziție, atât pentru pacienți, ca să-l accepte mai ușor, și pentru familie, cât și pentru neurologii de adulți să le fie mai ușor să urmărească un pacient care n-a fost al lor timp de 18 ani și devine brusc al lor. Deci, în momentul acesta este doar o relație de prietenie între neurologul pediatru și neurologul de adulți pe care îl sunăm, te rog, preia acest pacient și eventual îi livrăm un bilet de ieșire sau un dosar. Procesul de tranziție este mult mai complex și implică pregătirea pacientului și familiei și pregătirea unui dosar de tranziție și a neurologului pediatru, a neurologului de adulți.
Este perioada de adolescență, de ce este atât de dificil de a trece de la zona pediatrică la cea de adult?
Deci, de obicei, multe dintre formele de epilepsie sunt diagnosticate în copilărie și uneori chiar în copilărie precoce. Și atunci problemele pacientului cu epilepsie sunt destul de multe. Și neurologul de adulți nu este foarte familiarizat cu aceste probleme. În cauza aceasta este nevoie de o perioadă de timp pentru a putea face tranziția, pentru odată neurologul să se acomodeze și să cunoască fiecare caz în parte și toate problemele sale, pe de o parte, pe de altă parte, neurologul pediatru poate să furnizeze absolut toate informațiile legate de evoluție, de tratament și așa mai departe și, nu în ultimul rând, pentru familie. Familia este de obicei foarte anxioasă în momentul în care copilul lor împlinește 18 ani. Bun, acum împlinește 18 ani, ce fac? Unde mă duc așa brusc deodată? Deci este nevoie de pregătit această trecere a pacienților cu boli neurologice, cu epilepsie, despre aceasta discutăm astăzi, dar și cu alte patologii, așa cum a spus doamna profesor Craiu. Este nevoie de timp de a-i pregăti. Și din acest motiv, Societatea Română de Luptă împotriva Epilepsiei a inițiat această întâlnire astăzi și suntem aici la un loc neurologi pediatri, neurologi de adulți cu experiență în epileptologie pentru a stabili de comun acord cum să facilităm și cum să îmbunătățim această trecere de la neurologia pediatrică către neurologia de adulți.
Ați zis că ați venit să îmbunătățiți, dar niște
Da,
idei
sigur.
cam ce vreți să îmbunătățiți, ce ați vrea să faceți pentru această trecere. Cine? Stai să mut.
Asta e al meu, dacă nu s-a dat pentru mine.
Eu sunt neurolog de adult și reprezint Societatea de Neurologie, Societatea Națională, împreună cu Societatea de Luptă împotriva Epilepsiei și cu Societatea de Neurologie Pediatrică. Ne dorim să creștem nivelul de educație al neurologilor în partea de adult, în îngrijirea epilepsiei la adulți. De asemenea, să facem loc epilepsiei pentru programe mai de training avansat în acest domeniu și de o comunicare și să implementăm o rețea națională în care comunicarea între neurologii de adulți și neurologii pediatri în centre diverse în mai multe centre din țara noastră să funcționeze așa cum pe moment funcționează destul de bine în București. Dar la nivelul țării global este complicat pentru pacienții aflați la distanță să acceseze centre în care aceste echipe multidisciplinare, în care pot fi preluați în consultație împreună cu neuropediatru și cu pediatru și cu neurologul de adult pentru a discuta lucrurile în detaliu și pentru a face o tranziție cât mai bazată pe problemele pacientului cu epilepsie, probleme reale.
În afară de București, în ce alte centre, în centrele universitare doar, poate face această tranziție deocamdată sau?
În primul rând, lucrurile depind foarte mult de felul în care suntem priviți, în care epileptologia este privită global, de felul în care spitalele acordă
loc acestor departamente în care există medii specializați și cu un interes special în domeniul epilepsiei. Aceasta vine și din procesul de rambursare și din politicile de sănătate privind epilepsia și dezvoltarea centrelor care au un interes special în epilepsie și sigur că da, aici e un domeniu care antrenează cercuri vicioase în dezvoltarea acestei comunicări. Cu cât spitalele vor privi mai bine centrele de epileptologie, cu atât ne vom agrega în rețele multidisciplinare care să facă acest proces unul cu adevărat benefic pentru pacient și pentru îngrijitori.
În ce centre se poate face? În afară de București, în ce centre?
Acum se dezvoltă o rețea în centrele mari universitare și apoi fiecare la rândul lor vor încerca să dezvolte rețeaua în plan local în regiunile pe care le reprezintă. Avem aici reprezentanți din Cluj, de exemplu, avem reprezentanți din Timișoara, din Brașov, din Târgu Mureș.
Întrebarea dumneavoastră a fost foarte punctuală și nu știu dacă să nu ocolim de fapt. Tranziția nu se face. Tranziția, așa cum este ea definită în foarte multe articole publicate deja, ca să pregătești de la 12-14 ani un adolescent să devină adult, să-l faci să funcționeze independent, ca să poată să meargă apoi singur la consultațiile de neurologie de adult, să explici toate problemele, să reușești să te întâlnești de câteva ori cu neurologul de adulți ca să poți să predai ștafeta, într-un fel, așa cum foarte frumos a prezentat colegul din Serbia. Lucrul ăsta nu se face. Noi, sigur că mulți dintre noi începem să discutăm cu pacienții noștri diverse probleme care vor privi viața de adult, încă de la perioada adolescenței. Și o facem asta în mod instinctiv, am făcut asta de-a lungul anilor. Dar nu există un protocol oficial în care toată lumea să facă la fel, să fie o situație omogenă peste tot în țară și de fapt asta vrem să facem, pentru ca să putem să îngrijim bine pacienții noștri și să putem să avem o atitudine asemănătoare, omogenă în țară, ar trebui să avem niște protocoale care să fie deja recunoscute de Ministerul Sănătății, să fie plătite ca și serviciu pe listele de casei de asigurări de sănătate și ăsta e începutul și asta vrem să facem. Deci pornim de la puțin, de la ceva ce deja facem într-un mod neorganizat și fiecare dintre noi face mai mult sau mai puțin și așa cum se pricepe și transferă la cine cunoaște, până la o procedură care să fie urmată de toți, să fie obligatorie, să fie firească și să fie rambursată.
Neexistând aceste protocoale, se pierd pacienții pe drum, adolescenții?
Nu au cum să se piardă
Adică, până la urmă, știm că n-au control.
Cum să se piardă. Ei sunt niște bolnavi cronici. Noi vrem să intrăm cumva într-o normalitate în care să nu trebuiască în momentul în care copilul ajunge la vârsta de 18 ani, asta e o discuție pe care am purtat-o astăzi aici, chiar și propuneri legislative va trebui să facem, pentru că în momentul în care noi ne întâlnim între vârsta de 16 și 18 ani, neurologi de adulți cu neurologi de copii, ca să ușurăm tranziția acestor copii, va trebui cu toții să nu fim în afara poliței noastre de malpraxis, pentru că eu cred că în România e nevoie să vorbim din ce în ce mai, cu glas din ce în ce mai apăsat despre malpraxis. Pentru că la momentul ăsta o poliță de malpraxis nu te acoperă în momentul în care tu vezi un pacient care a fost pacientul meu până la 18 ani, vine la 20, a stat lângă noi 15, 16, 17 ani și în virtutea unor lucruri sentimentale, bineînțeles, ține de tine, dar tu ești în afara asigurărilor și oarecum, să zicem, în afara legii în momentul în care oferi un sfat medical. Bineînțeles că ei nu se pierd pentru că ei sunt bolnavi cronici, ei au nevoie de un neurolog, dar drumul lor e anevoios și ce vrem noi să facem este să le ușurăm viața. Mă bucur că astăzi sunt alături de noi oameni care militează pentru asta, sunt asociații de pacienți care au venit alături de noi să facem niște lucruri împreună, noi ne fiind de o parte și de alta baricade, fiind de fapt de aceeași parte, neurologi de adulți, neurologi de copii, pacienți, sistem, oameni care ne sprijină. Noi trebuie să influențăm cumva cu propunerile noastre niște decizii legislative, pentru că avem nevoie de asta.
Eu v-am întrebat pentru că nu suntem singura specialitate unde există această problemă. Trecere de la pediatrie la adult. În cazul cancerului, la fel.
Eu cred că v-ați referit la altceva și o să vă spun opinia mea, dar cred că o să vă împărtășească și ați întrebat dacă se pierd pacienți.
În sensul
da,
că nu mai vin
da,
în
exact,
continuare
da,
la medic.
nu vin, pentru că adolescența este o perioadă vulnerabilă. A accepta un astfel de diagnostic este extrem de greu pentru un adolescent, iar riscul este în momentul transferului, când ajunge la neurologie adult, să spune dacă epilepsia e bine controlată, că există forme de epilepsie care se pot controla medicamentos foarte bine, să spună eu vreau să conduc mașină, eu nu am mai făcut crize de 3-4 ani, brusc, pentru că sunt pe picioarele mele și pot să hotărăsc, pot să hotărăsc să nu mai iau tratament. Și de aici pot să survină tot felul de incidente, vă dați seama. Bineînțeles, ăsta este rolul acestui protocol la care ne gândim noi, ca acești pacienți să fie transferați cu un diagnostic corect, cu un tratament corect, și cumva să fie urmăriți, adică epilepsia este o boală care uneori pot pacienții se pot autovătăma prin traumatisme, prin căderi, deci nu sunt lucruri simple. Da. Din punctul acesta de vedere se pot pierde pacienți, adică ei o decizie să nu mai ia tratament.
Da, să nu mai vină sau...
Să nu mai continue tratamentul, da.
Mulțumesc.
Am dat dacă sunteți de acord să dăm cuvântul și domnului.
Da.
În Europa cum este?
În Europa, evident, lucrurile sunt diferite în unele țări europene. În altele, într-adevăr, încă lucrurile nu sunt standardizate. Noi avem în Parlamentul European un grup informal stabilit în 2011, European Advocates for Epilepsy, care, sigur, lucrează în strânsă colaborare și cu suportul puternic al Epilepsy Alliance Europe și acest grup, sub auspiciile Ligii Internaționale împotriva epilepsiei și a Biroului Internațional pentru Epilepsie. E un grup informal de eurodeputați care încearcă să urmărească subiectul, să crească gradul de cunoaștere al problemelor legate de gestionarea epilepsiei, accesul la tratament, tratamentul propriu-zis, susținerea drepturilor persoanelor cu epilepsie. Și sigur am salutat cu multă bucurie inițiativa de a standardiza, de a construi niște protocoale în România și poate și în alte țări europene. Suntem astăzi sub auspiciile președinției României la Consiliul UE pentru această tranziție extrem de importantă și extrem de sensibilă. Sigur că e doar o parte a ceea ce ar trebui făcut în domeniul epilepsiei. S-au mai spus aici câteva lucruri foarte importante. Unele țin de anumite modificări legislative, altele țin de o organizare și de un suport din partea autorităților pentru specialiștii care să vină cu soluțiile medicale și de management a bolii. Altele țin în mod clar de finanțare și de un semnal că sănătatea în general e o prioritate și între bolile care trebuie privite cu mai multă atenție, epilepsia capătă o importanță din ce în ce mai mare. Acestea ar fi obiectivele la nivel european și la nivel național. Sigur, mai multe vă pot spune distinși profesori. Sunt foarte bucuros că sunt alături de noi domnul profesor Trinca și doamna profesor Helen Cross. Sunt multe evenimente și întâlniri la nivel european. Acolo ceea ce putem face cu adevărat concret și practic schimbul de informații, să facilităm schimbul de informații, schimbul de bune practici și unor acțiuni comune care să potențeze rezultatul.
I would like to ask Helen Cross and Eugen Trika to address a few words for our press regarding the role of the ILAE and Epicare, and also the role of ILAE Europe and what we do together.
Thank you. I think I'm sorry that we have to talk in English, but and a little bit about this I'm not understood so far, so it's repetition. I apologise. However, I think increasingly now we are seeing epilepsy as, well, it is a symptom. We've always known it to be a symptom, and our problem, by that we mean that there are many, many, many different causes of that epilepsy. It is the epilepsies. And as we move forward in our understanding of the disease process, we can do much more for the individuals we see with the epilepsies to improve their outlook on life, improve their overall outcome. And in order to do this, we realise it's becoming much more of a specialist issue. And a lot of these diseases come on in childhood, but they extend into adulthood. And traditionally, those in adulthood, perhaps who have a lot of seizures, a lot of learning disability, have not tended to see the neurology specialists. They have tended to see general physicians who have thought there's not much we can do, we'll just carry on with the day-to-day treatment. As we recognise there's so much more we can do, it is really important that we make sure that paediatricians and adult physicians communicate, that we transition the care of the specialist children into the adult vicinity. Even those with what we would call relatively straightforward epilepsy need to be transitioned to those that understand the whole process, and therefore that involves a degree of education as well about all the different rare diseases and what we can do. Within part of the roles that we have, the International League Against Epilepsy, which is the global organisation for professionals with epilepsy, looking after individuals with epilepsy, we recognise that in some countries there is an established process, not necessarily completely followed because of resource and other problems, but a process for recognising that transition is important, protocols, checklists. But there are many areas around the world where it's still not seen to be important, but there really isn't the scope to move things forward. And therefore, as an organisation, we have a group that's looking at this, trying to find out what's happening so that we can provide guidelines, provide protocols, provide minimal standards, if you like, of what would be expected from transition, and to enhance the care of the adults, well, children, young people moving through, the adults with epilepsy. And also within Epicare, which is the European reference network for the rare and complex epilepsies. This is one of 24 networks that have been set up by the EU for rare and complex rare disease. And we have one specifically for the epilepsies because of the recognition that it is not just a neurological disorder, it's the fact that it can be quite complex, there are many different inputs required, and the fact that it is a group of rare diseases that we have to collaborate across Europe to make sure that we enhance management, share expertise, enhance diagnosis in different areas of Europe. And transition is very much part of that, because the rare diseases, they may present in childhood, but these individuals grow up. They don't disappear. They need ongoing care, ongoing recognition. And there is a lot of adults out there who also need to be diagnosed and move forward. And it's through this sort of process of collaboration that we can not only do the new trials, new research, but also educate out into the community about what needs to happen.
Yes, thank you very much. May I bring also a global view to that epilepsy discussion we have now. When we think about the prevalence of brain disorders, it's about roughly 1/3 of the population has a brain disease of any kind, 1/3 of the population. 1% of the population at least has epilepsy, 1%. So it's one of the most common brain disorders, as you like it. And the epilepsies are associated with a significant morbidity, with learning disability, with psychosocial problems, and also associated with increased mortality. So the likelihood to die is 2 to 3 times higher as compared to the normal population. So that's one of the things which is important. But, and we heard it in this session, many people believe that there's nothing to do. These are hopeless cases and they just cost, but it's not true. Epilepsy is one of the most gratifying group of disorders to treat. We can, when newly diagnosed epilepsy, 2/3 will be seizure-free. So that's a great success. The difficulties are with the 1/3 of chronic epilepsies, and then we need truly a complex clinical pathway. We can do something about that. And it all comes to define the structures where the patient has the best treatment, the best point of care, and the best clinical patient management in a pathway. And that starts from the early childhood, from the newborn. There's a transition process to the adulthood, but then also in adult neurology. So if we define that well, the patient will improve dramatically and the outcomes will be much better than if we don't structure that and leave it as it is in many countries, just by chance. And you have here the cut point. These are the pediatric word, and this is the adult word. So we have to define that better. What we also have to do is we have to define the healthcare structures in a way which optimize the outcome. So we need quality criteria, for example, for video EEG monitoring unit, for epilepsy monitoring unit. Imagine that a patient with chronic epilepsy, chronic seizures, be it a child or a young adult, can either suffer the whole life from the seizures with unemployment and all the consequences, and of course high costs to the community, or being referred to epilepsy surgery, where the patient have a 60, 70 or 80% chance of being seizure-free, getting back to work, getting back in full place in the society. So that's extremely important to have these centers defined and have also the care pathways defined. The second point is education, which is extremely important. If we have the best structures and no one knows that they are there, well, what the heck do I care? So they don't find the entrance to these patient pathways. And of course, reimbursement. And in reimbursement, governments always think on the direct cost. But the more important, and that's with all the brain disorders the case, the indirect costs are much higher than the direct cost for the treatment. That's the case in stroke. That's the case in epilepsy. And that's the case also in multiple sclerosis. Although we can talk about how cost-effective are the treatments. But I think if we don't take the value of therapy into the equation, we will miss something. So having said that, I'm gratefully indebted that we have a good cooperation with the European Parliament, because they are the ones who set the framework, who say that epilepsy is one of the healthcare priorities, who made the call for the epilepsy care networks, which are led by Helen Cross in a fantastic way, because it's a blueprint how you can structure healthcare by not only putting more money into the healthcare, it's simply by making it in a better way. And then, if you organize it properly, then you can receive money, because you can be sure that this money is well invested, because the network works. And then on the other hand, it's excellent that government representatives are here, because I think here is also one of the key points that we don't talk as often with each other as we should do, to explain what are the true difficulties in the treatment. And at least to my experience, when I talk to the government people, they always see the euro sign in my eyes because I'm a doctor, but it's not the case. The true savings for a society is when you treat the patient properly and make the patient seizure-free. The most expensive patient is the one who is not treated in the right way, because he always will come back and he will always create costs. And at the end, it's just a simple or a complex measure which you should do to make them seizure-free. And transition is a matter of talking to each other and getting the structures right and done. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Doresc și eu să mulțumesc în primul rând pentru invitația de a participa la acest grup de lucru, care mie mi se pare foarte, foarte important. Salut inițiativa celor 4 societăți care sunt implicate din România și alături de ele prezența experților internaționali de renume și care pot împreună, și cred că până la sfârșitul zilei vom avea un plan foarte bine pus la punct pentru repararea acestor protocoale. Ca și Ministerul Sănătății nu putem decât să susținem astfel de inițiative, mai ales că în acest an, în această perioadă în care România asigură președinția Consiliului Uniunii Europene, cred că este de datoria noastră să folosim această vizibilitate pe care o avem pentru a atrage atenția la nivelul întregii Europe asupra ceea ce România poate să facă bine, asupra bunelor practici pe care le are România. Dimineața, la începutul lucrărilor, am asistat la câteva prezentări și am văzut că nu există o practică unitară la nivelul Uniunii Europene, ba mai mult decât atât, nu peste tot există nici măcar interesul de a crea această tranziție, așa cum spunea domnul profesor, între vârsta de adolescență și adult. Ori pacientul este unul singur, afecțiunea este una singură, el trebuie preluat din timp, trebuie preluat cu particularitățile sale și dus acolo unde să obținem cele mai bune rezultate terapeutice pentru el. În mod sigur, și aici am să fiu alături de dumneavoastră pentru că sunt medic, Ministerul Sănătății are o sarcină foarte dificilă și anume aceea de a convinge Ministerul de Finanțe cât de important este ca finanțarea structurilor de sănătate, finanțarea programelor de sănătate să se facă în mod continuu și la un nivel satisfăcător, pentru că, în mod categoric, știm foarte bine, e mai ușor să prevenim decât să tratăm și, în mod categoric, așa cum spunea și domnul profesor, e mult mai puțin costisitor să tratezi eficient din timp un pacient decât să îl porți, să-l treci prin viață cu improvizații, ca să spun așa. Iar rolul protocolelor exact aici este ca ceea ce se stabilește de către experți, de către toți cei care au vorbit și vor vorbi în cursul zilei de astăzi, ca și protocoale să fie respectate la nivelul întregii țări și să încercăm să impunem și la nivelul comunității internaționale ca reguli care să facă tranziția pacientului mult mai ușoară și care să facă sau să-i asigure o continuitate a tratamentului. Îmi pare rău, aici am să fac o notă, am să vin cu o notă pe care nu mă hotărâsem încă dacă să o aduc în cadrul conferinței de presă. Și la Suceava există un centru de epileptologie, sigur, e un mugure acolo, e cineva interesat și îmi pare rău că nu este aici, în sală, nu participă la aceste lucrări, pentru că din aceste insule în care se dezvoltă cercetarea, se dezvoltă știința medicală, la un loc putem să ajungem la niște rezultate mult mai bune. Pentru după masă nu pot decât să urez mai departe succes și minte limpede tuturor participanților și încă o dată să asigur că Ministerul Sănătății, în ceea ce privește sprijinul prin intermediul comisiilor de specialitate, prin intermediul celor care înțeleg importanța în ansamblu a sănătății pentru societate, să sprijine din toate puterile ceea ce dumneavoastră ați început, să sprijine inițiativa dumneavoastră. Și încă o dată mulțumiri pentru acest workshop foarte, foarte bine articulat.
Avem în sală și reprezentanții Asociației Pacienților, dacă doriți să spuneți câteva cuvinte la asta.
Pacienților cu epilepsie din România în calitate de director executiv. Facem asta de 7 ani de zile și sper să ducem mai departe acest proiect mai mulți ani. Acest protocol este foarte important, în primul rând, pentru pacienți, că eu reprezint pacienții și o să vorbesc în numele pacienților, doar în numele pacienților. De ce? Pentru că este foarte greu, stau tot timpul de vorbă cu pacienții și este foarte greu copilul să treacă brusc la medicul adult. Nu știe către cine să se ducă. Medicul medicul care l-a avut ani de zile îl cunoaște, îi știe evoluția și este foarte greu să trecem de la pediatru la adult. În același timp, eu pot să vorbesc și despre dumneavoastră, că sunt puțini epidemiologi în România și noi, ca și pacienți, suntem foarte mulți și atunci dacă numărul de medici este foarte restrâns, medicul nu are atâta timp să stea de vorbă cu pacientul ca să preia întreaga situație a lui. Timpul este foarte scurt pentru medic. Și atunci avem nevoie de acest protocol pentru a veni în ajutorul, în primul rând, al pacienților și al medicilor, ca dumneavoastră să vă ocupați de evoluția lor cât mai bine și noi să-i ajutăm cât putem. Susținem și am fost de acord cu acest protocol și îl susțin din tot sufletul. Sunt alături de dumneavoastră și voi face toate demersurile necesare. Este nevoie, vorbesc atât în numele meu personal cât și al pacienților. Eu am mai participat și la parteneri de-ai noștri externi și am dorit să ajungem cât se poate, cât de curând, pe o linie cât mai înaltă, pentru că așa ar trebui să fim. Ne bucurăm că autoritățile, pe de-o parte, sunt deschise și poate ne vor susține acest program. Avem deja un program de epilepsie care are un succes atât cât se poate el, dar pentru noi este foarte util, pentru că totuși se realizează niște operații la noi în țară, care ani de zile pacienții nu au avut parte de aceste operații. Iar punctul meu de vedere clar este o susținere categorică atât a Societății de luptă împotriva epilepsiei, cât și a celelalte două societăți, neurologie pediatrică, neurologie pentru adulți, și inclusiv a membrilor care participă azi, medicilor specialiști care vin și contribuie, care și-au lăsat o parte din timpul lor al pacienților și încearcă să formeze acest protocol pentru a ajuta mai departe. Deci orice lucru de genul ăsta eu îl susțin și ideal ar fi ca aceste lucruri să fie decontate, susținute și decontate de Casa de Asigurări.
Dacă mai sunt întrebări, dacă nu vă mulțumim foarte mult și vă invităm la masă, așa cum invităm pe toți participanții. So thank you so much. We invite you to lunch.
So thank you very much. Lunch was good. Break was short. So, but we are still far. Yes, politicians, where are they? They're gone.
Still transition.
They're gone. Yeah, they're lost in the translation. So we had several aspects of the two questions here: when, and the other one was what. When to do what. So when I remember all the talks, there was general agreement that it should be well before the transfer point is there. So most of the people start to do it between 12 and 40, as far as I heard from all your presentation. You had the overview about what is going on in the countries. Is that correct, or is it? Yeah. So for Romania, would that be something 12 to 14 years? Or is it too early?
But it depends case by case. So.
Yeah.
But the puberty starts around even earlier than 12. So most of them could become mothers and so on.
Yeah, okay, good. So that's it. I think those two groups, which I haven't presented, and some of them puberty never starts or even late because they have some severe other problems, but we should divide it. And my personal impression is that the more complex and complicated case or a patient is, the earlier you should start. In terms of relationship between the parents, the caregivers, and the new doctor and the adult doctor, and collecting all the information and revising the diagnosis. So I think if you have let's say, an easy case, which with a normal intellectual development and an idiopathic generalized epilepsy or one of those syndromes which are easy to treat but difficult to cure, or vice versa, that can be later. So I think you should start with the more complex cases. When you have the period between 12 and 14, I think the best way is to start with the more complicated cases and complex cases where you need a lot of information. And the other ones don't take such a long time. Yes?
When you have a teenager starting an IGE, let's say 12, 13 or something like that, then you face the problem of choosing the drug. Then it's absolutely imperative to discuss with the parents different possibilities. Valproate being the most effective, then you should present also the adverse effects, and then you will bring up the pregnancy issues and all the adverse effects that this might have. Of course, all the parents will be immediately trying to kill you because you are discussing very, very early the problem of pregnancy with their child, Why do you teach her to do this? So,
because you did it too.
No, of course it doesn't happen so early, but you have to discuss these things.
No, I think that's important.
I think also for these cases,
also for the
are
easy cases,
easy to treat, and normal intellect people, maybe these are children who are going to take earlier these decisions in starting sex life and, well, pregnancy.
Okay, Sophia?
As you brought up valproate, I thought I would just share with you the experience we're having in the UK. You may have the exact same issues in your countries as well. We know valproate is a very effective drug. We've used it for years. We know it causes teratogenicity to the fetus. But in the United Kingdom, there has been intense lobbying from a group of women whose babies did suffer the damage. But what has happened now is our regulatory authority, the MHRA, has put strict stipulations, and it says on the packaging not to use in pregnancy, it's like tobacco packaging, and we are supposed to discuss and consider whether using valproate to begin with, they said, in all females, even tiny babies, which is ridiculous. So there's been a lot of advocacy from our British Paediatric Neurology Association, from Helen involved with the committee, and trying to say to them, be reasonable. Yes, it's important. Yes, we must discuss it. Yes, avoid using it if you can, but there will be women, young girls with JME, where it's the only drug that works, and if they decide, but also in those children who should never be pregnant, they're really severe learning disability, who cannot consent. Something is wrong if they are pregnant, something's very wrong. So those children, so we are now trying to moving forward, getting those forms that we must sign with the families revised, and trying to exclude those children with severe learning disability from what's called a pregnancy prevention program, where we are supposed to check pregnancy tests once a year, sign forms with the families. So it's become a really major issue, valproate in the UK. Is that something that you're all going through as well at the moment with your regulatory authorities?
Yeah, same thing, but we were just mailed informed consents from, I think it's Sanofi or some company. So they mailed out informed consents to all of us, I think, regarding using valproic acid. So.
And this is probably why, because of what's going on in the UK at the moment.
It's exactly like in Finland. We are supposed to do a pregnancy test with a blood examination for every girl who starts on valproate and has had her period. It's illegal to start it without that, say, a laboratory test.
So, as you all know, this goes back to the regulation of the EMA, sending out a letter that valproic acid should be avoided in any case and must not be prescribed unless all the other options work, and so forth. So the International League made a task force. There was Torbjörn Thompson, Retta, myself, then there was Tony Marson, and who else was on board?
Media?
I don't know. So anyway, so the outcome of this task force was that there are some indications where valproic acid is the best choice. Those women who are unable to become pregnant, right? And there are certain occasions where it is definitely still the first drug of choice. The problem is that they even made it worse with the second announcement that all women should be tapered down of valproic acid, even those who are seizure-free, don't want to become pregnant, and all these things. So, and this has been even more strict. So there was an appeal or it was a public consultation, and we again put in our comments, but they were, as usual, ignored. It's like at home when I talk to my children. But that's where we stand now. I think the recommendations of the task force are still valid, and what we can do is definitely to have that in our local discussion. So I'm not sure whether it helps in the UK, but definitely in other countries it might be helpful to say, well, this is what the community thinks, and this is what the EMA wants from us, and this is the form where we have to give written informed consent. I always object when we get something from the pharma company, because they simply put the responsibility to the doctor, and the women now having the process wanting some money because they had valproic acid goes against Sanofi. So they have the highest interest, of course, in getting rid of these few patients with valproic acid. They don't care about that.
I mean, what's happening, because the actual consent that we were asked to sign categorically said they had to come off at all costs or go on the PREVENT programme, which for a 13-year-old isn't appropriate to have a coil or whatever. We've actually got a refined consent that if we think there is no risk of pregnancy, us and the parents, then we sign that they don't have to fill that out.
Yeah.
And that is our decision, but we get that signed off. And that's a new form that's coming out, and that will be applicable in the UK.
What's very important here is that, I mean, of course, all the legal framework must be obeyed, but there is a medical decision where in some cases this is the best drug, or a pregnancy is impossible. We have to document this in the forms, and this is also part of the transition clinic, because the adult neurologists and the pediatric neurologists who discuss this should be in line with these thoughts. Would be the worst thing of a transition when the lady comes or the child comes to the adult neurologist and say, oh, pregnancy, oh, you have to be, no, this has to be taken together, and it's a very good point you brought up. I didn't think of that, because that is one of the key points which you have to document because of the legal implication.
So early start of the discussions. Maybe pediatric neurologists would like to comment here. Do we already do this? Do we already discuss with our patients some issues regarding transition?
Who does not? Well, I think, yeah.
I would like to say something that I think on a more informal level, we already start this when we start addressing the child first, and after that the parent. Yeah. So it's, hello, how are you doing? And then after the parent, how was he? Yeah. So that's a first spark in the transition process.
Okay, but you know, when it comes to these delicate issues with valproic acid treatment, I think it's important that we have a form. Right, and it's probably something which you have to create in each center. I know the UK forms, and they have been sent around by us, and we adopted this form from the UK, and so did the Germans. Informed consent agreement that they have all the information for valproic acid, right? But this is what is necessary.
I would like to say something different. What does it mean when and what? It may mean some other dimension. For instance, it's very easy for United Kingdom to say we have a transition clinic because they started in 1948. No, what is 1948? It was a couple of centuries ago.
What did they start in 19? What did they start?
They started transition approximately in 1948.
No. The transition worked 20 years ago. The NHS was set up in 1948.
Based on the legal framework from 1946. I read it in there.
She's just been looking it up before it was there.
So what does it mean? That means the generations of doctors, patients, parents, and public opinion, were educated to think in some different way, to consider this problem early in the evolution of the communication with the patient. So it is not it is a very difficult task for any society or any country where it should start sometime in the future. So it's not the same position. There is a lot of job that is already done if started a couple of years or tens of years ago. So that means that in the program of education of medical students, training process for specialists taking over this. So we must think that it must start in the process of education very, very early. Maybe to educate children.
The last discussion point here. Of course, it's important to make education, but we are discussing when to start transition, not educating people.
So, but I think there's consensus 12 to 14, 12 to 14, and one of the key points is reproductive age starts at that time, and we have to agree within the countries, and I think the league or the chapters could be facilitating this, to translate the forms in the different languages.
I think that perhaps we are doing the active transition from 12 to 14, but if you'd agree with me, once you have a clear syndrome that exists from the newborn age, you immediately start talking and behaving differently. So when you know for sure this is not something that's going to go away, it starts even earlier. So, but in all other cases, I think 12 to 14.
And there is a time in your career where you realize that you will retire before the child moves on to adult services. But you're correct.
Yeah.
So, do we discuss with the whole family? Do we will put in this protocol the indication that having separate discussions with the child and with the family? Should we start an early break between the child and the family? I don't know if it's the correct word, break. Just to make the child to understand his role as an individual, as being adult.
Yeah. Okay, so the question is when to be, from the pediatric side, when to start a more individual focused approach.
Yeah, because
and say to the mothers or fathers, you stay out, I talk with a 14-year-old boy alone.
Yes. Should we just stipulate this, that we need discussions alone with the child with normal intellect, for example?
So what do you think about that? Yeah.
It depends on his, the child's cognitive development.
Cognitive development, yes, that's
and
one
I
thing.
think I'm not sure that we can stipulate it in a protocol because until 18 or 16 he's depending on his parents, so we have to ask the parent if he give us the permission to talk with the child alone, even though he wants to do that.
But there's
before
one
16, before 16 in Romania.
Okay.
Yeah. But
Starting
between
with 16 we can talk with him.
between 16 and 18, and this is the period where which Helen pointed out, and I think Sophia also pointed out, that there is the point where you should do something about, because some of them are not able, they need a guardian and they have to apply, and I think that's the same legal framework in all of the European countries. There's not a difference, but we don't do it as good as you, so we do it most of the time then in adulthood, because the pediatricians, they say, well, now it's your job. Right? So, but that should start earlier, at the age of 16, for several reasons. It's very clear. I think that should be done, because when we go to the second question, what to do, discussion about the medical treatment. The second thing is about the legal guardianship, who is responsible for that, and what to do, foster and stimulate the individual approach to the patient when they are intellectually normal. I think that's very reasonable. For me, when you write the question what to do, it's always what do you do in a protocol. I think the medication valproic acid and the legal guardianship, yes, that should be done in the protocol. But how you approach the individual patient, I think that depends very much on the situation. Even intellectual normal patients may want their parents in all the questions involved, even if they could decide on their own. Even as an adult, they look at the parent and say, what should I do? Right? So that's...
So our colleague just looked in the law and she said after 18, I remember from legal medicine that we had some case-based discussions, and it was 16 when a teenager asked the doctor not to inform the patients about her pregnancy, and that was fulfilled. Maybe something is changed in the law, we have to check. So since I finished the medical school and I discussed the cases, so okay, so we have to check. Another question, should we be just we the doctors involved in the discussions, or we should also train the nurses? Should we have a multidisciplinary team? How to stipulate this in a protocol?
Well,
how do you do it?
What do you think? I would, I can make a bracket because there are no epilepsy nurses in most of the countries. No transition nurses, no epilepsy nurses, and nurse is a nurse. So they even lost the speciality in psychiatric nurse or neuropsychiatric nurse, so it's just a common education. And all of them are paid in the same way. So no nurse wants to have a special education. They want to have administrative positions which are paid in a better way. But that's away from the patient. So the only way how we can get around this is that we stimulate the interest in the nurses, but we cannot involve them based on formally. So that's legally for us impossible. It's on goodwill, and when we are nice enough and they say, oh, that's interesting, and then they start to work. And then it comes more or less by itself because they talk with the pediatric nurses and then they exchange.
I think it depends on the area and on the local organization of the medical activity. Because, for example, in Romania, nurses are not implied and are not involved in such a conciliation program, at least in the most of medical facilities. Maybe a psychological aid would be helped in some cases. Maybe a psychologist could be involved in the team in such a thing, not the psychiatrist. It's not about these pathological aspects of the disease. It's only the support and the evaluation of the psychological status of the patient, and also the relation between the patient and his family, his parents. It would be important to see the whole image of the problem.
So the point you want to make is to involve the psychologists, neuropsychologists, social workers.
Or at least to be there and to be a part of the team, and to intervene if it's necessary in some cases.
What I found interesting here is that some of the models say that we go to the pediatric department, we do the clinics together, we do the visits together, and some of them simply say, well, this is the patient and you go next door over there. So what is your thoughts about that? Should you presented it also, joint clinics where pediatric and neurologists and adult neurologists sit side to side. They are introduced in that way from one hand to the other, and they have clinics together. They see and learn how the pediatrician talks to them, or you want to have it separate?
Theoretically speaking, or applying to Romania?
First of all, in the best of all worlds, theoretically speaking.
Theoretically, a common center, I think. It should be a common center dedicated to such a transition process.
Yeah, a common center, yes, but if you do the clinics, you have to see the patient together.
But can I just make a comment, because I'm old enough to have started off the clinics. I was the registrar when we started off the clinics at GOS, and we had to, the problem is this whole process about seeing them jointly, which clinic, which hospital. And to do that at the paediatric hospital was a major issue. They didn't want the adult neurologist in it who was going to pay for the clinic, whereas actually just turning one of John Duncan's clinics into a joint clinic, so we didn't change anything other than the fact that I got an honorary contract and went along to the clinic, meant that we could do it without any extra cost. So it did mean that an adult neurologist had to give up one of his clinics a month, but it became a joint clinic. So he wasn't seeing any less patients, and the referrals still have to go to the adult neurology hospital. We still have to do a formal referral, but one of us is always in that clinic. So it is a joint, we do it jointly, and actually our hospital doesn't know that we're not being paid ourselves for that, are we? For GOS, but you don't know that, Sophie.
The patient are
you know,
seen by
yeah.
two doctors at the same time,
Yes.
simultaneously. Yes, that's what I mean. That's joint.
That's what I mean. But we had to set it up in an adult neurology clinic, as in we took over one of the adult neurology clinics and made it into a joint clinic. So the adult hospital still thinks that's an adult neurology clinic.
Yeah. What is it, Rubelia?
There are several problems.
Yes, we have the major problem is that our insurance policy that does not cover to see, I told you in the morning, in the moment when you come in my room, you are out of your malpractice insurance policy. So we have to start from here, because if we see together the child or the adolescent, that means that you are in an illegal area of your practice. You know?
Don't you have consults from
No.
any other
No,
adult?
it's not
The
allowed.
things are very separate here. Each one of us know exactly what has to do. So the pediatrician sees only child, and the adult neurologists are consulting only adults.
Yes.
So we can mix it, but we can cooperate, we can keep in touch. So I think we couldn't establish a general model for all the countries. I think there are so many different problems, and we should take what's good from the other, from the neighbor, and apply. But you can make a globalization here.
Is the problem the legal framework?
Yes.
Or is it the will?
No, it's illegal.
It's not.
It's not
But
the
what,
will.
I mean, if you have an outpatient clinic, right? Patient comes in. You are the doctor. You are in charge. You get the consultation fee, or you don't get any fee, like in Austria.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. You see the patient, and you are the one in charge of that. And then you have a guest doctor, which is the adult neurologist. Be my guest and come to my clinic.
He may assist, but he is not allowed to make an indication, an official indication.
No, because you are doing that, and
Yes.
the doctor, you
And
invite the
that's
adult
what-
neurologist to sit next to
He
you.
may
So
ask
you are
you.
an adult neurologist, right? Did you go to the pediatric department?
Yes.
You are pediatric? You are adult?
Yes.
Right. You are, yeah.
Yes.
So will you invite,
Yeah, I invite her because I know her.
you work together in the same?
Probably I invite her.
You see?
But it's only a matter of willing, because she will not be reimbursed for this kind of visit.
No.
So she'll do it because she's my friend.
But you get the salary anyway, irrespective of how many patients
But
you
I
see.
don't think you can actually sign the recommendations. So officially put your name as an adult
No.
neurologist.
No, the problem is not to sign it. The problem is to make
Even to see it,
a
if you
sort
don't have an
transfer.
agreed consent or something, you have to ask the parent if he allows that, and even though you are in...
But that's the
Yes.
process. You starting with 12 years, you tell the parents, no, one day we will have to transfer the little patient, and we have to involve the adult neurologist quite early. So
Yes.
he will be there at the next visit, so that I can introduce him or her to you,
Yes, but you
that
said...
you get her to know.
Okay, but you said that he will be paid in the same way now, because if I invite Ioana or Dr. Pania to my clinic, they have to leave their clinic, and we don't have any official agreement between our hospitals. So how she can be during her program in my clinic? she's out of the, it's an illegal gesture.
No, it's not illegal.
It's illegal if your hospital doesn't allow it, or the law
No,
doesn't
the
allow
law, because if you don't have a contract and the manager does not allow that, you cannot do it.
We have to have an honorary contract, which means that we have been approved by the hospital. We don't get paid by that hospital.
We don't.
You don't get paid by that hospital, but we have what's called an honorary. In fact, I have an honorary appointment because of the
Okay, Dana?
So we actually have an exception on that. For example, within the EPCARE network, we couldn't stand up alone as a reference center for rare epilepsy, so we made some contracts with other hospitals. Among them is the adult neurology clinic from University Clinic where Ioana works, and this means that some of the children will be evaluated with stereo EEG in her clinic.
Yes, she can. Yes, they are already. I thought so.
She can.
I was confused where you worked.
She can admit the children in her ward just simply because they have neonatology in the same hospital. So they are
one is supervising the
and one is
process.
supervising the process, and there is a written agreement. There is a written and signed agreement between the managers and between the doctors.
But it's only for an examination.
It's only for an examination.
This is
also
not for treatment, not for monitoring. Because it's another.
No, to us it's for monitoring.
So I think
What's the test?
For the
not
intracranial
of the disease.
What we should by all means avoid is that we mix up two things. First of all, what is the best for the patient, and second is how can this be put into the legal framework of each separate country. So when we ask the first question, is it the best way to see the patient together? Yes or no? If we say, well, we feel as a group that it's the best, like you do it on an informal basis, you sit together and you discuss in front of the patient, you investigate the patient together, that would be the ideal work, right? Can we agree on that? Yeah? So, and then the problems come. Once we agree what the best is, we have to solve the legal issue. And there are several ways. One is that when a university department or one healthcare provider has a department for pediatrics and for neurology, then it's a matter between the department chairs to collaborate and to say, well, my doctor goes to your department, your doctor goes to my department, and then we can share. It's a reciprocal thing, and there's no reasonable argument against it because it's cost neutral within one healthcare provider. The second is like you have between your two healthcare providers, different hospitals, they need a formal contract. That's also what you mentioned. If you don't have a formal contract, it's not illegal, but it's not clean, right? And when the CEO of the hospital knows things like that, he will say, it's not possible because I don't care about the patients, I care about my hospital, right? So, and then you have to take it at a different level. And it gets even more complicated if you collaborate with practitioners outside of the hospital, only with the private practice. But you need to have this formalized, I think. And legal problems are there to be solved. This is why the lawyers are there, this is why the judges are there, and there's always a solution.
Well, when two physicians are in the same place with a person undergoing transition, I think as long as the patient is under 18 in Romania, then the legal responsibility will be taken by the pediatric neurologist.
Correct.
And the paper signed by,
yes.
And the adult neurologist will just
be an observer.
Witness the process,
as you said,
discuss,
you observe
learn
the
case actually to be transferred to him. And as long as the next consultation will be for the patient over 18, then the adult neurologist will sign papers and pediatric neurologist will just come for discussions and maybe giving the history and everything that he or she knows.
So whenever I see a patient, I say, well, this is a patient, so I saw patient blah, 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 and I took the history together with the parents, with the husband, with the brother, or whoever is there, with the name, so that I know that this person was there, and then you can say in the report that history was taken, or Dr. XYZ was present at this visit.
I see two problems here.
Yes.
One is the payment that already
What
was
is that?
payment that was already discussed for both doctors. That should be done for both. Either one of them is paid by the hospital and is allowed by understanding with the manager of the hospital to
Exactly.
go
Yeah.
in another place to give expertise or to learn about the case. That would be the easiest way. The other one will be to be paid and to find an insurance modality in the insurance house to pay.
You're paid
More
per
difficult
patient?
to be
You're
done.
paid by patient in Romania?
No.
So you're paid?
By
But you're paid.
No matter how
You're
many.
paid.
No, but for, yes, the hospital
But
gets
the
money for the
hospital is
number of
interested to
patients.
have patients. I mean,
The hospital gets money for the patient?
Yes,
Or
for patients, yes, for
Okay.
the insurance house. So
And the second
the
problem,
hospital is interested to have clients. So if
Which
many as you
our
have.
contract provides
more and more
more
Okay.
patients.
Well, then you can.
more and more
It's an easier task for the adult department to say, well, I bring you more patients because I get them from the pediatric department, and in 2 years they're all with us. Otherwise, they stay there.
Otherwise, they go in another department.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's something which you have to convince. Or you make a model like in Finland, Kuopio, that you have 50-50, right? Or 2 days, 3 days, or whatever.
And another problem that I see in Romania is that there are very few pediatric neurologists and other neurologists, and they are overloaded. So I really don't see Dr. Mândruță or Dr. Pana to come in the pediatric neurology ward from their time of, which is already up here.
Well, but you know, Dana, we all have 24 hours a day, right? And it's a matter where you spend these hours, which you have. I mean,
But
2 hours for sleep, 2 hours for eating, 2 hours for everything, but the rest is for the patient.
Ioana Hezirina, Dr. Pana has another young neurologist who can actually be involved in the transition.
That's why I told you about a team and a center, because nowadays only one man can't do. We are, I think, we are not enough neurologists in Romania. Our colleague from Bulgaria said they are almost 600, at least they declared 600 neurologists at 7 million people, and we are maybe 715 or 17 million
So
people.
who knows how many neurologists exist in Romania?
In Romania, yes, 700
700?
or adult neurologists.
And how many are in training?
No
Is it
more
known
than
or unknown?
200 per year.
It is known, but we do
No
not
more
know.
than 200.
So it's a no, you know it. There are some figures.
Yes, there are the
At
exact
least they are in the
figures.
government.
Of course.
I'm just thinking, I understand that everybody's overloaded, right? But from the experience we've had, there are not that many children who are, it's not like you're gonna have that many children on a weekly or monthly basis for transition. It's just one visit. If you say, okay, we will have an adult neurologist come to the pediatric ward at the age of, let's say, 16. I mean, seriously, how many patients do you have that are 16 and that are ready in your office for transition? You may have one per month or more. So it's not, it
2 or
shouldn't
3,
be.
that's.
It's like
That's right, we have a monthly clinic and that more than caters for it, doesn't it?
Yeah,
So
it's about sort of 4 to 5 per month
Exactly.
from our
And you're
entire
huge,
service.
so
Our
I'm
entire
thinking,
service,
it should not be overloaded. If you start doing it, you will see it's not that many patients. Okay?
Maybe just for situation, hard situation.
For severity.
For severity.
Yeah, and even if you make it even more concise, and if you just do it pharmacoresistant epilepsies, then it's even less. So once you get into it, you will see it's not that overwhelming, actually.
Yes, please.
I don't know if it needs to be done on every patient, especially if the two departments are close to each other. Like in Kuopio, we have pediatric neurology and adult neurology very close to each other. And if there are patients that are seizure-free, like with epilepsy, with the medication doing fine and there are no difficulties with cognition, I don't know what they get from the adult neurologist coming there and saying I'm this or this and we'll meet you again next month or next 6 months. Because there are really no problems. He's doing fine. There's nothing to go on with except for you have to continue with the medication. And you expect him to arrive to your department and send there. And I really see no use in that kind of patients for the adult neurologist to come down there and just to say, hello, my name is Anni or conferinta or whatever the doctor's name is.
I think it's a very good point what you made. In some of the patients, it's not a work because you see them rarely, they are seizure free, but you have to get contact in most of the system. And in those who are difficult, I think it's an extremely good invested time when you do that together, in one way or the other. If you don't start to do it even in a purely informal way like you do it, it will never go, because the patient will come at anyway one day or the other to a neurology department or have a second look, and then you start from the scratch. So I think that's a well invested time.
There's also a Canadian model in one of those papers we all read, where you have a nurse-nurse transition. So that's also an option. If for some like easier cases, even 15 minutes nurse to nurse and the family, that can also be something that's helpful. So.
Absolutely.
In those countries where nurses are allowed to do that.
That's right. No, that's right.
No, I think it's good.
But
I
sometimes
think
even
we are just too focusing on what's allowed. I mean, who is there supervising you when your two nurses are with the patient? Why are we so scared?
No, we're not scared. They are not allowed to do any medical decision.
Yes.
No, not decision, but to talk and the counseling.
Well,
Yeah, but it means seeing the patient on their own, which may not be allowed.
Exactly.
And that's the issue. I mean, in order to do nurse-led clinics, they have to have a specific training. It's true, isn't it?
Yes.
They have to have, and then there's all sorts of modules they have to do. And therefore they can do it, but it's an extra thing, and then they're allowed to do it within the governance framework of the hospital. And the governance framework isn't sort of a law, but it's for safety reasons. We have to have a governance audit type process.
Okay.
I looked on the internet for the nurses in the UK. You have different competencies that they get. For example, the epilepsy competence for a nurse, which we don't have it here because it was not regulated. So it's something to make.
But that's not absolutely required. I have to say that you can get that as an extra thing whilst you're on the job. So we've appointed epilepsy specialist nurses who've got some experience, but not necessarily had all those diploma tick boxes and everything. So that's not absolute requirement. But if you're going to see a patient on your own as a nurse, then you need specific
That's the
competencies.
key point. Yes, Sophia.
We were talking over dinner last night, myself and Masha, and so there are as Helen said, a lot of the specialist nursing training is on the job and the experience they get. We also have a programme of epilepsy training courses in the UK run through our British Paediatric Neurology Association, and they are for multidisciplinary doctors and nurses together in a series of increasing knowledge of epilepsy to make them knowledgeable, but not epileptologists like we are. But for nurses to practice independently, they are called nurse practitioners or advanced nurse practitioners, and that group have a very specific group of competencies and training, and they're done through the universities. They do it as MSc modules and a higher training, so it is quite rigorous. Only some of them want to do it, but those that do it are amazing and run our VNS services and deliver care on the wards and function at and above the level of
junior doctor.
And as far as I know, only UK, Ireland, and
Finland have them as well.
Finland also as
Nurses.
nurse practitioners.
They are not completely independent.
Yes.
Or maybe it's Sweden. Sweden have them as well, don't they?
Norway. Norway.
One of the Scandinavian
Well,
countries.
you know, the
Sorry
one
to
thing
lump
is-
you all together.
In Finland they have limited access for prescription medicine, like for some antibiotics and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They are not completely independent like in Europe, they are epilepsy.
So I think, Finland, I don't know, but there are two countries for sure have these nurse practitioners who are allowed to do that and to treat the patient and also give treatment recommendations. So the key point is that when we sit here and discuss something which is possible in the US or in Canada, it's not possible in Europe, right? Because of, except notable UK and Ireland, you cannot put this as a recommendation. So we have to stay with the doctors and to liaise the adult and the childhood. And I think you had, most of the points are there, right? So the other thing which I found very important here is to get the package. Because we are struggling not with the legal framework, who is allowed to do that, we are struggling with the IT. So the IT doesn't allow, although it's very well equipped, doesn't allow data exchange and making transition clinics. So we have separate boxes in our IT, and we have to provide something else for the patient. And the idea of giving the package with all the necessary information to the patient as a printout or on CD is something extremely important, because he or she is the owner of the data. It's not the hospital. Legally, the patient owns the data. So if we hand it out to the patient, that would be the securest thing. And I have to say, we don't do it in a formal way, but I think we should start doing this between 12 and 15 and then start the transition process. That who does it? Who gives who has a package for the? Do you get a package from Dana?
Yes, because we discuss special cases together and we get data.
You get the data, but is the patient
Through the patient, of
through the
course.
patient? The patient
gets
comes
it
with a
all,
package.
Actually,
Gets
it's
it
not
all,
as in other countries. The patients get it all.
Yeah.
So everything that we investigate, treat, document
From the beginning, they have the
goes
paper
to the patient.
on
They
the-
have dossiers, they have the CDs, they have the EGs, they have everything.
You see
So
how
in this way
advanced
it's easier.
Romania is in that respect. It's a leading.
And we thought that we are much behind with this.
No, patients in Austria come and say it's all in your computer. And you say, no, I don't have it. Why don't you have it on your computer?
Although they said, don't you hospitals talk to each other?
Exactly.
No.
So in
We've
Romania,
all got a different IT system.
And then when they come to control consultations, and they don't bring up all this data by themselves.
We don't
We don't have it, now it's in your pocket.
Yeah,
Oh, we thought you have it.
You see it
As
in the
well.
private hospital and so on.
They come with nothing.
okay, so we have to work on that.
So this is a good idea. So to deliver a package.
Yeah, and
child.
then I think we are, I don't know, because we are run out of time. The checklists are something Chair Mihaela and Helen. Yeah.
But what means with and without ID?
Intellectual
Uh,
disability. Is there really a
ID
difference?
is a passport or a...
Patients without ID.
Okay, so which transition method?
We spoke about that earlier.
But even for the well-controlled epilepsies, seizure-free, doing well, we need to discuss driving issues and contraception, and so maybe they should also be.
You ask which transition method for Romania, aren't you?
Yeah.
Even if they.
So you're
cope
relating
very
to the
well.
topics, right? So a checklist where the topics
Yeah,
should
yeah.
be
Who
included.
does the checklist?
Yeah,
and,
it's Mihaela and Helen.
Yeah.
They do the check. So the method. So you're thinking about because there are, what we agreed on, this, as you said it, is not one rule for all the countries. You can involve the nurses to a very important role in several countries, but you have to stay within the medical framework, because the doctor is responsible for everything, including the social workers in Austria. So it's different regulations. So I think these methods have to be adopted to the legal frameworks of the country and to the things which are possible. But the main goal is to do it together and to work involve the multidisciplinary teams. If it was that what you thought about methods, yeah.
What would best fit to our conditions? What do
Romanian
think about
clinicians.
that? What do you think?
We have to start somewhere, and we cannot start doing as a joint clinic maybe, but we can start maybe to think about a protocol, and we have to be very careful what do we write there, because saying that the doctor will come in our clinic without any protocol or any agreement between hospital is a problem. And maybe later on we can think about the joint clinic, but if we start there, I'm not sure
we can do it.
We will
But
be
maybe
there.
we can start
You
on
know,
what
I think
on
that
what
network it would be more profitable for
platform.
the network
Yeah.
between neuropediatrics and adult neurologists with a different approach for the less severe cases going to outpatient clinic, and for the more severe cases to be taken by the higher level center of epilepsy or a clinic specialized, and this network could be organized for the whole country, all over the country. For
But do you
instance,
think that it should be organized the same for the whole country, or maybe the
should be
more
because we have
advanced
children
centers?
with epilepsy all over the country. You can send a child 600 kilometers to be seen twice a
But my
year.
question is, if you think that transition in your center will be similar with the transition in a remote county who has only one adult neurologist and one
We
pediatric
apply the
neurologist.
same protocol,
So
Maybe the electronic file would be the best.
can I ask, because I mean otherwise you have to set the framework. What do you want to achieve with this workshop, and what do you not want to achieve with this workshop? I think
Can't solve the world.
structural. Well, first of all, the structural problems in the healthcare system cannot be fixed by what you do. So this is I think given. So what you can do is you decide what are the options. Yeah? These are contracts between two hospitals, contract between two departments, which is a memorandum of understanding more or less, and then of course contract in some specific areas where there's only one person taking care for the children and one for the adults. So these are different settings, and within them I think there are different frameworks and methods how to do that. And that's the way where you can move it forward. And what I think is always helpful is when you know what is already existing, and look at you have something which is running, you two have something which is running. Is it the same hospital or it's a different hospital? We have two transitions already
examples.
in Romania. Somewhere else maybe.
Based on friendship and based on contract.
But then that's the way it always is. That's the issue, isn't it?
It all starts with friendship.
It all starts with an agreement. An agreement. It's the right thing to do. That's the thing.
And I think that would be also something where the league could, get some information in where are these, and then you can take it from there. And these settings are important because these give you the range of opportunities which are there. Yeah?
I think between 12 and 16 or 18, one consultation for a year can be for transition, and for each year we must have, after this meeting, a checklist, and we must complete this issue.
Yeah. Can I shortly change this? I would suggest that, one is network is fine, and the other one is a contract between two hospitals or two healthcare providers. Contract between two healthcare providers. And within departments, you cannot make a contract, you can only make an agreement.
Agreement, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other one, contract between two individual professionals, well, then you have to make a contract regarding the reimbursement and the legal framework. That's also a contract. Yeah?
There are people working independently and having individual contracts with the insurance system. So this is why I put this between.
Yeah,
therefore,
no,
that's
good.
feasible. It has to work for that whatever individual. Yeah.
Happens in the country.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
That's good.
I don't know.
That's
if
good.
It's the case. I don't know.
Good. So now the checklist couple.
Before that, the general practitioner shouldn't be involved.
Well, it depends it depends to what degree the general practitioner is involved in their ongoing care. And again, it depends on their environment. Now, to me, in our environment, the general practitioner hasn't got a clue other than writing the repeat prescriptions. You know, they haven't got any understanding. Those that are cognitively able want to go to the GP as minimally as possible because it's another person who doesn't understand. And those with more severe problems may be utilising them to gain access to other services, but actually input into the epilepsy is zilch. You know, and I've tried to liaise with some GPs, even some that I personally know, thinking they would get an understanding, and they had zilch understanding. So I think they need to be aware of what's going on, but I don't think they have a role of the handover. Does that make sense?
Yes, makes sense.
That's my view. I mean, it depends really on your environment. Again, who needs to be involved is who's involved in the day-to-day care.
Environment.
Yes.
Okay.
In Romania, GP are important for referrals, at least for referral. You can send the patient to a department or a clinic without a referral. Only if it's an emergency. We don't talk about emergency.
And so if you're passing from one hospital to another, it still has to come from the GP.
Yes.
Therefore, they need to know what's going on, and they need to be involved in the discussion. And there could be a template of a referral that you could arrange with the
Because they
GP.
are a part of this.
Well, that's what I mean by what's required. You know, that's the issue. Ours are required for writing the prescription, repeat prescription, so we have to keep them informed of everything.
Then in Romania, it's essential to have them.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. And that would be, of course, good. Are the patients attached to one practitioner, or can they choose? They're only allowed to go to one, or?
They can choose.
They
can choose.
They choose a practitioner and they keep it how long they
Until
want. They may change in that.
Okay, but then it's but that's an advantage because then you have to build up a relationship with him or her.
Yes,
Right?
yes, we try to do that. Actually, every patient, when he's discharged, they get a medical letter.
Yeah.
They are basically obligated to give that to their GPs.
Yeah, but
It doesn't always happen.
Yeah.
But
you know, I always say writing a letter is not building up a personal relationship.
Yes, I know, but our patients are from all over the country. And
We couldn't build up a personal relationship with all the GPs we deal with.
When you know that this is the GP.
Can't even do it with all the paediatricians.
Let me introduce myself. Drink a cup of coffee.
Are you doing this?
Yes.
Wow, with all the GPs.
Not with all of them, but with those which are important for our network. So we are organized in a way that there are certain commissions, and with those commissions of the general practitioner, I asked them, are there any problems with our doctor letters? What do you think about the referral system? That's what I do as a department chair. So you have to know.
But there is no way we could do that with our GPs. If you think about the number of patients and the number of GPs, we could do it with we do it with paediatricians. Paediatricians, we have network meetings, we have a relationship.
Yeah. You see, but this is why I asked when in Romania everything goes not with the pediatrician but with the GPs. I think you have to think about the network of GPs.
We do it with our paediatricians.
So it does depend on where the funding for that patient's treatment comes from. We talk in the UK about the commissioning groups, and in the children's hospitals, 90% and more of our funding comes through central national funding. Few comes through those type of groups. We call them clinical commissioning groups. So for us, we don't have that immediate relationship, and there will be thousands of them.
Yeah.
Our key relationship is with the referring hospitals, the local district hospitals, And exactly as you said, Eugen, we foster that relationship
absolutely.
big time. We do exactly that.
Yeah.
We have network meetings and we do that.
You have to
Cup of
nourish your
coffee,
partners.
absolutely. And they do the same with us because they want to know us when they need to pick up the phone.
Yeah.
So it's a two-way thing, and we need each other.
Yeah.
Now, I had an experience with one of the GPs who actually didn't want to give a referral letter for patient to be admitted in the hospital, and we needed that for performing several tests within the hospital. So I called the GP and I discussed and I explained. So he provided immediately a letter by telephone. So it is important, I would say. And you are right. Should we maybe provide a personalized letter to find out the name of the GP and write it down?
So if I understand right, you right, so the hospital doesn't record the name of the GP.
No.
Okay.
So in our system, we know all our letters. We do a letter on every single patient. It's copied to the local paediatrician and the GP and the families. So they all get a copy. So we have a registry of every single GP and we know which GP is attached to which patient.
So you saw the letter from our outpatient clinic. There was in the left corner was the GP, and there was the secretary. So, but that's a different system. So you don't record the name of the GP in the hospital. So the only you have or you don't. In Brasov you have, in Bucharest you don't. In Timișoara, that is of course Siebenbürger. So you have. Yes.
With other rules.
Yes. So, but then I think we are. I mean, these are different regulations, even in different hospitals.
Yeah.
So, and then again, it highlights the importance of finding individual agreements.
Should we have a list with the neurologists that are specialized in epilepsy and are maybe willing to receive patients with epilepsy under their care? Would this be?
I actually agree. You know, sorry, I'm
interrupting
you again. Because there is an issue, and you must be the same. We have got not lots more. I think there's about 900 adult neurologists in the UK and 120 paediatric neurologists. So there is, and most of the epilepsy care, tertiary epilepsy care, is centred on the university hospitals in the centre of the major towns, the children's hospitals. Whereas adult neurology is much more hub and spoke. So they are linked to a centre, but the adult neurologist may be 2 days a week in the centre and 3 days a week out in a district general hospital. And there are many more interested in epilepsy. Yes, there is a load that aren't, but there are many more. So part of the role of the transition clinic is deciding where the follow-up should be in the longer term, and maybe it's available more local to home for the patient than it is. So that's where we find having a list of either learning disability consultants and or adult neurologists who have an interest in epilepsy around the place. And that's where our adult neurology colleague has much more of a knowledge about who's around and who's in which area than we do, because there aren't paediatric neurologists out in the periphery, but there are adult neurologists. So care can be more local to home.
The way how you could stimulate a network among epilepsy interested neurologists is of course through workshops and teaching courses and involving the neurological society a little bit more. So at least based on the international level, the European Academy of Neurology has the mission to provide basic knowledge on epilepsy for every neurologist, and they work together with the local chapters, and the ILE has the mission to provide high-class epilepsy care and also provide high-class education. That would be the level above. But I think you have to liaise with them in order to create a neurological network where they at least have the basic knowledge. For the time being, it's zero, right? Or zilch, as you say.
Zilch, yeah.
It comes from a film, or is it?
Zilch, I don't know. Is that a word I've made up? It's not a word I've made up.
It sounds like a German word, but
zilch means nothing. Zilch.
Yes.
American slang. I don't know where I picked it up.
Polish word.
I make up a lot of words, I tell you. So.
Anyway, it's 0 or nada. Yeah. Okay. What else, Dana? Checklist. Checklist. Now.
Well, yeah, we could. Do you want a break? Do you want me to stand?
No, I agree. I mean, because it's I'm standing all the time. No one.
No. But I mean, we don't want to reinvent the wheel, and there are checklists available that you could work on that are suitable for your environment. You know, whether it be with or without learning disability. And I think with intellectual disabilities, as I said before, it's not going to be one size fits all. You're going to have to have a draft of a standard checklist for the ordinary, maybe a checklist for the learning disability group. We're happy to share ours, but then that may need to be tailored to the individual with specific aims. So a more generic checklist is all right for your cognitively able, straightforward epilepsy, and you can do through that checklist, not necessarily all at the same visit, but at different visits, to make sure it's all signed off. But when it comes to the learning disability, you can have a framework, but then it may need to be individualized depending on their ability.
So I think there in the package you send around there are checklists.
Yes, there are.
And you presented also the checklist.
And we can share our slides.
More generic ones, the Liverpool checklist.
Dana has them. No, that's fine. Yeah. So we can share that. The only other thing is also whatever your legal, to add to that checklist, and in our country it should be the checklist of the mental capacity and legal discussion of legal framework with the family. Yes. But that will be individualized to whatever position it is in your country. You know, we can't give a generic, but something along those lines.
Yeah.
Coffee break?
Excellent. You see? Sorted.
Thank you. You're much more efficient than me, I have to say.
No, it's easy. It's all written down. We don't need to reinvent the wheel.
No, wait half an hour. Grab a coffee and go back.
Yeah. That's fine. Okay.
Yes.
Stimulate the discussions on the female patient with epilepsy.
Allow me to stay here. I think most of these issues have been already discussed here now, because there are some points to talk about. I think one should be the poverty and puberty and pregnancy program, and maybe the treatment and hormonal therapy. So, what do you think about how these patients will be prepared for puberty and for all the modifications of their body? Is someone something to mention? Yes.
From my point of view, I think I discussed with the girls and also with the families together the issue of the possibility of aggravation during menstruation in some patients, and then I talked about the role of different hormones. And then I discussed also the possibility of interference of some medications with contraception, and the role that some drugs may have on pregnancy. So also the situation that if they are contemplating pregnancy, and I started this discussion before 18, much more before being in a relationship, that they should think about changing medication, if it is the case, at least 6 months before the pregnancy, and to plan the pregnancy. And then I discuss the impact of different anti-epileptic drugs on the fetus and possible malformations and impact on cognition and further child development. Because I think they should know, and unfortunately, in my experience, even if I talk to them, to many of them, they sometimes come back and say, well, I'm pregnant, let's change the medication. So, and this is not possible, of course, I will not.
Are they pregnant at 16 or 17?
sometimes they do have pregnancies, like 17, 18 or something almost. Yes, we have many gypsies. And they get married sometimes 12, 13. They, yes, they do not have any kind of contraception. So this is why they very often become pregnant without any planning before. You know that many patients are
I
very...
think there are two different problems and two different situations. Situations are different between how severe are the disease and how illness is the patient. If the patient is a young epileptic woman who has normal endocrine function, it's a problem of option, how, when and what do you say to her. And if it's a severe case, we don't discuss about it.
With intellectual disability.
Yes, yes. So we put the problem in different ways. One aspect. The other aspect is when and who should insist about some issues. For example, in adolescence and puberty, maybe we should insist about contraception. And in fact, that means we should make some more serious medical education. I don't think this is something special for epileptic patients. We should talk to all of them. And after 18, when the patient is already in the adult neurologist department, maybe the most important problem is pregnancy planning and program pregnancy planning. So I think there are two different problems which should be approached both by neuropediatrics and adult neurologists, but in a different way. Yes.
Yeah, you're right.
Because there are two different
kind of
periods of their life and two different interests for young women.
We should make them aware,
yes,
and all pediatric neurologists.
First, we should make them aware, and after that, we should support them if they want to be pregnant and have children. And there are two different aspects. And the other issue, of course, is the patient monitoring all over her life regarding treatment and hormonal life. It's another problem, very important. Somehow related to treatment.
Anyone else would like to add something? Adult neurologists? What would you discuss for this issue of, I don't know, women with epilepsy, girls with epilepsy issues? Would you discuss?
I think the prognosis is necessary to be discussed. So I frequently encounter a situation that the patient who came to me for treatment asked about the prognosis, and as far as I understand, some of those patients were not informed of the prognosis of the regarding the therapy, regarding the future, and practically all other situations. So I think this should start from the very beginning of the establishment of the etiology or syndrome of the patient.
Would you, Masha, discuss anything in your protocol regarding women with epilepsy or girls with epilepsy?
What we have on our checklist for discussions is definitely folic acid. Pregnancy, of course, we mentioned that. What we do usually is determine the CYP genotypes for all of our patients, especially the female ones, and then discuss with them the possibility of interactions with the birth control pills and the therapy they're taking, and if they increase the dosage of this and that, how it impacts their birth control. We inform them and educate them on that one too.
Okay. What was the last one? Interaction with contraception. And?
Yes, we determined their genotype for the CYP genes, CYP, cytochrome.
Right. Do you do that?
We do it for every female patient.
Do you do that? Genotype for CIP for 50?
No. It's free for us, so we do it. It's simple. Yeah, well, it's,
I tried to do a research on that, but it's really expensive to do the genotype on CIP. I don't think it's feasible in Romania. Should I write it down?
No, if it's not feasible.
I'm writing it down to think about it. I'm going to check. The other thing we start to talk about is planning for the gap year and for university and living away from their parents, and we start thinking about it in the context of night times and monitoring and who knows. And
we have a lot of patients who are not from the city of Zagreb but come to study in the city. They actually are from islands or somewhere else, and that's the time when they are the first time they're not living with their parents and they're under no supervision, and that's when we have these issues, and we sort of really have to be the ones discussing the stuff that they may not have discussed with their own parents.
our adult neurologist always says to them that the most protective thing they can do is share their bed with somebody, and the parents always go, but it's protective.
All right. How should I write it, this?
Don't write it. You don't need to write it.
All right.
And nocturnal supervision.
So this should be here, maybe. Okay. Sharing out life. Okay.
And also we must reinforce the belief of the patient that therapy is necessary. So this is the major issue in patients who are transferred from to adult neurology. Is therapy necessary, and how long the patient will take therapy? So this is an issue that should be stated from the very beginning. That it is protective and necessary, and it is the price the patient should pay to live normally.
You meaning women who are going to have pregnancy
No,
or
for every patient.
for every patient?
I'm advocate of males.
Okay. What about women? What else would you discuss? Breastfeeding, but not by us.
Not by you.
Adult neurologists.
it's another problem, another program. Okay.
We should have the neonatologist.
We have a nice collaboration with women with epilepsy who are planning some pregnancies, and we have a doctor from Institute of Mother and Child, OB and obstetrical gynecologist, who is prepared in epilepsy, has some knowledge of epilepsy issues. And when you are referring women to some specialists who will guide them during the period of pregnancy, they feel more sure and pay more attention when it is not only the neurologist who is talking about all these issues, but also the OB, gynecologist, yes. And we also keep in touch with gynecologists about women with epilepsy, about all these issues of treatment, breastfeeding, all other things.
In the UK, the obstetric input and obstetric physicians for women with other medical problems such as epilepsy are good. Something we are really lacking is that adolescent gynecology. When they ask us questions in the clinic about the drugs, their heavy periods, those type of things, and I'm quite at a loss. I don't know what to tell them to do, and occasionally we do have access to it. Some places have an adolescent gynecologist, other places don't. That's something that we're very much lacking. Okay. You do have.
What do you have in hospital? What?
Gynecologist
for adolescents.
It's rare. Very nice. Yeah. Okay.
I'm thinking that one other issue we should discuss with all of the patients, both female and male, the issue of substance abuse at this age and how it relates both to seizures and other issues.
Recreational drugs.
Maybe we could also talk about the jobs that they can do, because sometimes they come in the endocrinologist and they say that I want to become a driver or go on a ship on the sea, and they are for the first time they hear maybe they cannot do that.
And this is much more difficult with children that had syndromes that are age-related, and they are completely, seizure-free in the adult, but they keep the EEG traces modified. So when we evaluate these people for, I don't know which professions, aircraft pilots or I don't know.
Even for a driving
Even for a nurse.
lesson.
I had recently a nurse that was sent to me to evaluate if she can continue her work, because she has a very pathological EEG with absence pattern, but no seizures since.
She says no seizures.
She says no seizure, yes, and she was. She has no treatment. She was not followed since the age of I don't know, 14 or so.
So why did she have the EEG?
By mistake, she was a nurse in a department, in a medical department, and then they received an EEG, and they wanted to try to test the EEG. And she didn't know that. She only know that she had during childhood some problems, but nothing so far. That's why we had then. Spike-and-wave pattern.
That's an interesting issue
or
of
childhood
syndromes.
temporal spikes in Rolandic epilepsy.
So
but
what
no longer
is-
seizures in adults.
Well, the thing is, the jobs that they can't do, well, obviously, it appears to vary from country to country, because the only jobs that you absolutely cannot do in the UK with epilepsy is be a Well, be a pilot, be in the armed forces, they won't allow it, or HGV, as in heavy goods vehicle driver, as in trucks and things. Those are the only jobs you cannot do. No, I'm not even sure train drivers on the list. If you're treated and you're seizure free, but it's like driving, you know. It's so those are the only jobs you absolutely can't do. Whereas it obviously varies, and therefore the only job that for which you would have an EEG check would be pilot.
Yes.
Okay, that's the only one.
So that's why for the pilot, I mean, I see
But
the
central
pilot
temporal
having the pattern of.
Well, we had this.
temporal spikes.
I had this question come to me about this chap who had benign rolandic epilepsy as a child. He's grown out of it, and they raised the question, he can't be a pilot. And you think, well, actually, he did have BRE, he's not tendency. So this whole new classification of 10 years, no seizures, would apply to him, but we didn't have that then. So it's, you're going on the clinical side, not necessarily an abnormal EEG, apart from being a pilot.
So should we introduce in the protocol using new definition for result epilepsy, or should we say we will refer to the local regulation, local legislation?
It's local legislation.
Yes.
It's local legislation.
Well, local legislation says 10 years without seizures, 5 years without medication for heavy drugs, and 1 year without seizures with medication for any kind of normal vehicle. Think. No? We pass to another framework. Important. I don't know what I thought here, dividing responsibilities. I thought.
Very difficult to know. What do you think?
So who will do what? I mean, what to be done by the pediatric neurologist? What to be done by the adult neurologist? Should we share with the nurses? Should we?
I think that it is mutual responsibility, and it would not be divided. Maybe at some point one will do
shared.
Another issue is about the DRG codes. So the hospitals are reimbursing our activity based on the DRG coding. So in spite of progress that we make in classification and in all this activity that we add in our patients' care, finally they are discharged with the DRG that is the same as they were admitted compared with the one we admission.
Sorry.
So the DRG.
So the same diagnosis?
Yeah, we do a lot of things for our patients with epilepsy, and they come with a DRG code, and then they are discharged with not so much progress because we don't have an encoding for the new, classifying better or doing most of these activities for our patients.
So it's not regarded you've done anything new. Is that what you're saying? Because it's no new code.
Yeah. So the DRG is the same.
With the
ICD,
ICD.
so because we take the codes from the ICD, so the ICD is not improved.
It's not improved in any way.
They have some diagnoses which are.
But, and the problem is though, the ICD that's being used is lagging behind. Nobody's using ICD 11, I don't think, are they? And some people are still using ICD 9. ICD 10 is a little better.
Yes,
but ICD 11 actually is based on the new classification, so it would actually give you more, it's more likely that there would be a change in code. Do you know what I mean?
Coming with
Yeah, I know.
low epilepsy and getting on the left side and getting up to
Yeah, no, I know. And
all the pre-surgical evaluation.
We've also got the same problem because we have a coding department. So actually, unless we write the diagnosis really accurately, it all gets miscoded.
Yes.
We don't do the coding.
But we are paid regarding this.
Yes,
yeah,
so
it's dramatically
absolutely.
for us. If you forgot something, it's like you will have the half of the money.
So this is something that we didn't solve, and I think it will not be possible to solve yet. We should discuss among ourselves how to apply the checklist, who is going to do each of them, and then we will probably borrow from your experience and just, like you said, not reinvent the wheel for it. What about driving license social issues? How do you see it solved?
Well, driving license is even more complicated. We don't have protocols to evaluate the patients for their ability to drive.
Well, nor do, I mean, in the UK, the DVLA, which is the driving rate, states that they have to be seizure-free on or off medication for 12 months. But it is up to the patient to report.
Yeah, that's the problem.
And therefore you rely on the patient to report. We put in our letters whether they are or are not having seizures. The GP therefore has a look, and what happens is they have to declare that they have epilepsy on their driving license, and when they apply for the driving license, they then, and what we say to the teenagers is, or in the transition clinic, you know, getting a license, you can drive if you're seizure free for 12 months on or off medication. If you're applying for your license, if you tick the epilepsy box, that's not going to stop you driving, and explain that they will then, the DVLA will seek further information and confirmation from the doctors, not that the doctors can say yes or no, that they're seizure free, and then they will get their license. But of course those that are still having seizures aren't eligible for a license. So we have to explain all this. That's, you know, but also there's the whole issue about the, you know, for example, you know, the learning disability group, that the parents are absolutely anti, you know, they can't drive because they're seizing. Well, they're not going to pass the written part of the driving test because actually they're not cognitively able. Yeah.
So, and then are the young people with the IG with makes clinical discharges that we don't know how much they impact.
Well, that is clinical. With us, it is, are they having clinical seizures, and that includes what we call auras, or with us, it's anything, including an aura. You know, is included as an event. In some countries, that's not the case. It's only if you black out.
For us, it's nothing. Mentioned.
But there are European guidelines, aren't there?
There are European guidelines, and all the member countries adopted these guidelines. I mean, there's a little difference between 5 years with annual control or 5 years without annual control. So these are just cosmetic things to be different, but the framework is given in the European Union, and you may make some exceptions in the individual membership countries. So there must be a regulation from the government in
it's a 2010 law that is a
translation of the EEG. It's nothing about.
But that's something which is in the judgment of those persons who give you the permission, yes or no. And what we do with the EEG when there is no clinical sign of seizure, of impairment of consciousness, then is fully able to drive. If there are seizures only sensory or only motor seizures in the left arm, the patient is allowed to drive because it's not impairing the consciousness and the reactivity. So that's the key point. If you have it in the right leg,
no.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's. But the point here in the transition period is that, again, the pediatrician and the adult neurologist, they must have agreement in what they tell the patient. Right? Because when they come and say, now I'm 18, I was referred to you, and I want to drive. So then I say, well, just a moment. But the pediatrician said, I'm allowed to drive. So whether it's true or not, you never know what the patient tells you. But this is something where you have to stick together and at the age of 16, you know, this will be the criteria, this is what you have to do. Consensus, yes.
Okay, so I'm sorry because I was writing, I didn't get quite everything. So you said that the patient declares if he or she has a seizure. You write a letter and document what the patient said. that for 1 year he or she didn't have a seizure, then the patient goes to the GP, and the GP will give a permission for driving, or who is given the permission for
I
driving?
don't know who is in capacity
specialist,
in
the
Romania to get. There are rules for that, so there's no. Yeah.
The neurologist.
The neurologist.
Yeah.
Not the medicina muncii.
So if the patient comes to us, we automatically ask for an EEG in every patient. And then how long will be the recording? Is it standard EEG? Is it long EEG?
Well, you see, in no driving license regulation, an EEG is required. It's up on your decision. Whether you want to have 10 minutes, 15, 20 minutes, there are recommendations of the International Federation of Clinical Neurophysiology to have 20 minutes. But you know, this is not exactly what I said. This is this is not within the scope of this task force to change the regulation for driving license.
Yes, we have an order, we have a government order, and they say that we have to have at least 5 years without any seizures in the law, so we cannot change that. We have to copy.
No. It's 5 years of continuous checkup.
Fără nicio problemă.
1 year without seizures for driving license, B category. Please believe me, I read that 5 times.
But the reason why you're doing an EEG is your personal view. That's not absolutely what they require. That's the issue. So that's entirely up to you. But that's not absolutely what they require. What I can say is, again, the International League Against Epilepsy has a driving task force because these issues are all known. You on it? No, I can't remember, I don't know who's on it.
No,
You're on it.
we're on a survey.
There's a survey, right, but there is a task force, which is but that
it's led by Natalie.
it is, yes. So, but at the moment, the driving regulations include nothing about EEG.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So just asking what you usually do.
I don't do an EEG.
Ah, okay.
Basically. But then again, it's not. Yeah.
So, I mean, but that's a very personal opinion.
Yes.
You know, the problem with the classification is, of course, it all depends on memory of the patient, whether he or she can recall the seizure.
Yeah.
It's not the awareness during the seizure. If you have a pure amnestic seizure, you react completely normal, but you simply don't have a memory. If you ask the patient, you would classify it not as an amnestic seizure, but as an impaired awareness seizure. This patient is definitely able to drive and to do everything. John Jackson investigated the patient where he diagnosed a pneumonia during a seizure. He was fully aware of what he's doing, but he had no memory, so that would be a misclassification. So in some patients like this, we do prolonged video EEG monitoring, 1 week, so for that, and to see whether they have seizures or not. It's when you have a sincere suspect that this patient has impaired consciousness, and then you can test him or her during the video EEG monitoring, and that's the best way to prove it. Otherwise, I do the regular EEG as a kind of usual procedure, although it's not necessary, but it gives also a reassurance for the patient. Say everything's normal, fine, a little spike here and there.
Of course, exactly. Yes.
What about if the patient is aware but has other sensorial disorders like visual hallucinations?
As long as they don't impair the ability to drive, because all the legal
But that's
regulation
for you in Austria. But for us in the UK, anything, even warnings, even aura, or visual hallucinations is indicative of seizure. And
Aura is not allowed?
No, aura is not allowed.
But that's in Austria. It has to impair the capacity to drive, irrespective whether it's a seizure or a syncope. If you have syncope,
it is. And you say it's the same in Finland.
Yeah. No, that's like that.
Even with for psychogenic seizures.
Well, then that's no. If we definitely say they're psychogenic seizures, they're not epileptic seizures.
Yes, but the driving. Do they drive?
Well, in Austria, no, because it's not related to the etiology of the inability to drive. You can have a hypoglycemia, you're not allowed to drive.
Well, yes, that's because it's stating that anything that, I can't remember the wording, it's impairs, but that could be epileptic seizures, which includes auras, and it also includes anything that could cause blackouts, such as hypoglycemia, for example.
Or alien limb syndrome in cortical basal degeneration.
Thank you very much, never heard of it.
Dementia clinics.
We had 6 last week.
Driving a car.
I mean, Elliot,
The foot on the throttle was not mine. That's an early sign of cortical
this is only on the right side. On the left side is fine.
These neurologists.
I was going to say, I've not seen in children, don't know.
But these aspects are in the law, as you said. The aura is written in your documents, because in our documents they said something like we have to monitorize them for driving for 5 years, and if they don't have 1 year seizure, they can drive. But also, if the seizure reappear, we have to forbid them to drive for 3 months and then to reevaluate them.
After 6 months. And they're not allowed to drive while they're using medication. 6 months. And for 6 months after the medication.
But again, that's an easy task, because this is simply the rules which you have to follow.
Yes, yes.
There's no discussion about that, and but the recommendation which a pediatrician gives to the patient must be the same. Exactly.
We should be on the same page.
On the same page, yes.
I think together with some lawyers, we should sit down and just write a protocol. Who is doing that? Who is doing this? Who is giving the based on the law? Because people read this law, they don't understand.
Then you have to spread the gospel.
Yes,
Yeah,
to be very clear.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
we have the EEG here, Dana, also.
The
You
EEG.
don't have to have any discharge on the EEG, says the law for
I
us.
mean, if we do 2 minutes EEG, we don't have any discharge, this is fine. Because the length of the EEG recording is not mentioned.
Yes, the duration is not mentioned. But here,
EEG has a role.
but it's specified here in the law.
Yes.
Oh, but simply, but it's doesn't follow the EU regulations, so it's more strict than the EU.
Yes.
So for the Rolandic self-limited epilepsy, who still keeps some spikes on the EEG or on
Yes,
the
this is a nightmare.
This is a nightmare.
So I can only tell you, in Austria they are allowed to drive. Full
Yes,
stop,
it's
because they
normal.
fulfill exactly the requirements. Here they would not be allowed,
Yes.
I have to
even
put
without
a-
a single seizure.
Can you read that part with the EEG?
Actually, there is an exception, you already hold a driving license that has been issued, and the understanding that you only have seizures that don't affect your consciousness.
Okay.
So you go through a separate assessment process.
Yeah.
So it changed.
Good. I changed my mind.
You are very right.
E ordin 1162, că nu mai citește, că n-are rost, din 2010.
Despre ce vorbim?
N-are rost să...
So reimbursement and education finally.
Well, we touched some of that already, and it's a huge thing. I mean, education, it's easy, but the transition, the reimbursement, that could be a whole another, workshop, and I don't think that we can solve it here. American Academy for Pediatrics actually has a nice list of all the codes for everything that has to do with transition. So everything that you do, every consultation, the low risk, medium risk, high risk evaluation, everything is coded. And,
Can you provide it? Do you have
yes,
it?
I will send it to you.
Please send it. I will circulate everything what we discussed today, all the PowerPoint presentations. Please give me all PowerPoint presentation to put it on the desk.
So I will circulate that because it actually has a nice list of everything that has to do with transition. So every little thing that you do has a code and is reimbursed. So this could be a starting point for us to approach our insurance agencies to, incorporate some of that into our work. And that's a struggle that every country will have to do on its own. So I don't think we should spend a whole lot of time on it. It's another struggle with the long-term video EEG monitoring, and that hasn't been solved, right? So it's just something to do. And education, I've just given some examples on what we do. It's easy, it doesn't require much money, and it's definitely something that everybody can apply. We all volunteer our work for that. And what Dragoslav mentioned, we should really focus on implementing some of it into medical schools. And I think that's, that should be enough for some start. And then, like I said, once you start doing it, it's easy, it just comes to you. You read more and you talk more with your colleagues and it just develops. It doesn't really require huge amount of education, but what we've done in Croatia the past couple of years, every year when we have our annual epilepsy meeting, where both child and adult neurologists come together, we always have a session on transition, and that's the best way for us to really implement everything that we want to change and exchange our experiences so far. And most importantly, especially for the ones who are not working in big epilepsy centers, to get to know the colleagues. So like I said, if you're working in a small town on an island, who do you send the child to? So it's like you guys said, you do it on a friendly basis, but if you're alone in somewhere far away and you don't really know that well somebody, so these national meetings help a lot. And to create a list of available adult providers who are willing to take on patients, especially the ones with intellectual disability. And I think that's a good start.
How much epilepsy gets taught in your medical schools?
Not much.
I'm just thinking, you've got implement transition in the medical school education. The issue is the epilepsy education and starting that early.
Exactly.
I mean, I know, for example, my daughter's course, they have 2 lectures.
Yeah.
One from a basic scientist who she said knew nothing. She's got a bit more knowledge than most. And one where she said she's useless, which is not very complimentary. But if it's not being, epilepsy education is not being given in a authoritative, up-to-date, enthusiastic way, we're not going to get the medical students coming into neurology and into epilepsy.
Yeah. So we have this one new mandatory class in our medical schools that lasts all 6 years. It's medical school in Croatia. So it's this class that is mandatory for all students, and it goes on from the first year till the final year. It's called Basics of Physician's Skills. So we get a group, so each one of us gets a group of like 5 to maximum 10 students.
Yes.
And we spend every year with them 15 weeks per year, where they come into the hospital and we teach them from talking to the patient to putting in IV lines, intubating, blah, blah, blah. So every year it's, it's appropriate for their level of learning, but they get to see this, like they get to see the transition, they get to see how we talk to the patient, they get to see the paperwork. So that's something that's really good for them to start thinking about this interaction.
So this is practical work, or is lectures and
both? Both. They have both.
And they have during
all 6 years, 15 weeks per year.
How many
holidays or
students
when?
do you have?
No. It's
It's mandatory to do it. Do you
yes, it's implemented in their coursework. Yeah.
No, sorry.
Because it's learning
only
by doing.
pediatric neurology?
Sorry?
15 weeks per...
No, not pediatric neurology, 15 weeks per year in the hospital. And it depends whether they get into neurology
so
or
you can have transition in any department, right?
Yeah.
We have the 3 clinical years, so they are 3 clinical years in the hospitals.
Yeah, but this
During the 6.
same with our students, except for this class that starts from the first year and goes on till the 6th year. So they get that experience from the freshman year.
But coming back for pediatric neurology, you have 2 weeks of pediatric neurology during the 6 years training in medical schools.
Unless they happen to be attached to that for their
8
pediatrics.
courses and 8 days or 9 days of practice.
No, but you're not So this does not have to do with pediatric neurology, it has to do with transition, what I'm talking about. So they get to experience the transition from freshman year to their senior year.
But this means that transition should be performed in other branches in
no,
we are performing it.
They're not to be close to the patient and to see the medical process. But it's possible if you have only few students. If you have 1,800 per year, you
get
take
5
them
students
and put them near the patient.
We have 5 students per doctor. We have almost all of the
5 years
doctors involved.
The same students all the year.
Yes, I get same 5 students from their freshman year to their senior year.
That's what I'm talking about.
That's why
So, but
same
you-
students.
Yes, I know, I understand.
You cannot change the medical curriculum that's cast in stone. But what you can do is what Masha said, and I hope I understood you right, is that you involve students wherever you are in the transition process.
Yes.
That you can do, because that's free. What they learn during their, I don't know how you call it, a formulatur. So they are 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks with you. That this is one point. When the student is lucky, he's with you. The student is unlucky, bad luck. He's with you.
And another thing that we are copying from our colleagues that do, let's say, brain surgery. So they have the IT sector. So what I did with our IT sector in our hospital is I literally copied what they have in surgery teams. So they have this multidisciplinary thing that's in our IT system for the hospital. So where they have a brain surgeon, a pathologist, a neurologist, etc. And I said, well, I want this for transition. So they opened one for me. So we have medical data available within that system. So we have a psychologist, we have speech therapist, we have occupational therapist, and adult neurologist and a child neurologist within that IT thing. So it's easy.
So I think more or less we've come to end, maybe. Yeah.
Probably that the specialist in checklist and discussion. Should we also think to include a discussion on some issues about sport practicing? Yeah, because I think it's recently here 2 cases. One wanted to perform boxing, and the other one delta planning. I mean, with parents it is impossible, so they will restrict, and now they can go, have a seizure and die, or have a this knockout and have a seizure and again. So it's to discuss which kind of sports they can practice during this adolescent period and later or never in life.
Yeah, again, there's I think there's this task force on sports and the report and recommendation by the league, which are
published in
very
2015.
reasonable, I think, because in most of the, at least countries and practices I know, it's far too prohibitive. So the positive aspects of sport, as long as it's combat sport or something like this, the positive aspects are very important. And many of the patients are, you're not allowed to run, you're not allowed to do this, it's exhaustion. So I think that's very good that you brought it up, because that's an agreement between pediatrician and adult neurologist too. They have to be in consensus. My experience is that the pediatricians are more restrictive than the adult neurologists. My experience, and the mother said there, don't allow him this to do, it's so dangerous. I say, no, this is something different. Yeah?
No, we are very active in our media and in our education all the time, like really active. The only 2 sports that we give caution to are, what do you call this, jumps into the pool?
Scuba
diving. Diving.
No, just diving. Diving, yes, diving. And well, of course, all the flying sports, but so diving, swimming, and any sports that are there on the like free climbing and stuff like that. Everything else is we encourage it. Even swimming alone. I mean, why not boxing?
Yeah.
Boxing is not
Why
It's
does it
open
have
doors
to
from
be-
me. It's
why
only
is
that
it-
what I heard from the pediatricians, at least in Austria, they're extremely restrictive.
Send them
I
over.
tell you,
Well, we're
these
not.
are, these are,
Yeah.
We're not.
so you.
There's only two things I say they shouldn't do. Everything else is they decide the risk themselves.
Yeah.
One is scuba diving,
Yes.
because if you're under the water and you lose your regulator for
Yes.
10 seconds, and solo
climbing.
skydiving. No, because if you're on tandem, you
What
know,
is skydiving?
I was like jump out of a plane in a parachute.
Yes, yes.
But it's solo. But if you've got an instructor on your back, you can do it.
Oh yeah. But I'm also doing the free climbing, as in
free
where you're
climbing,
not roped on to somebody isn't really sensible either.
But is
stop.
there any single case reported that the epilepsy patients had an accident while free climbing? Is there any? No, you've seen
No, it's true. No.
There's
Because
not
we
a
stopped them,
single
that's
case,
why. Because we tell them not to do it.
I did not.
As a circular argument.
Look, the problems are also coming from the sports medicine. When you do competitive sports, it's skiing, it's ice hockey. In Scandinavia, I know.
Well, there was a gymnast, wasn't there, that
Also,
came to
yes.
the European Union who'd been
Yes.
stopped from doing
Yes.
gymnastics because she had epilepsy. She was well controlled and with or without control, and she was stopped from actually doing gymnastics.
Either one of these ski jumpers.
Yeah.
Is it true that Ronaldo had epilepsy? This is
The other,
the big.
yes,
big-
yes.
And,
Yes.
and he had seizure just before the fight.
Exactly. And he had a
Who are you
focal
talking about?
seizure, complex partial seizure. Ronaldo.
Ronaldo footballer.
Ronaldo. Not the beautiful
Brazilian.
Portuguese.
Oh, not him.
Beautiful.
Which one?
The Brazilian.
Oh, the Brazilian
The
one.
former one.
The proper one, yeah. I know. Well, there was a South African cricketer as well.
Yeah.
I'll think of his name in a minute, but he was, and probably nobody will remember because he's in my era. But yeah.
So I think, but that's important to have agreement there and to follow these recommendations more or less.
Oh, actually, we also had a 400-meter runner who regulated. He wasn't on any treatment because he felt that it made him sluggish, and he had IgE. And you could. I always felt I could tell he'd had a seizure the night before because you can't tell you looking really wiped out. But he used to just regulate his, make sure he slept regularly, because he felt the drugs would slow him down. He was an international 400-meter runner.
And then some of the drugs are on the prohibited list.
Oh yes.
Now it's less relevant, but primidone and barbiturates are prohibited. They're not allowed for any competitive sports.
I'm not sure why, because it makes them more sluggish than
No,
actually.
the reason is those who shoot.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That would not be good.
Drinking alcohol. It's very good because you lose tremor. They're anti-tremor.
Oh right. Can you imagine?
Should they have a group photo group?
Yes,
Yes,
photo
we
group,
never did
photo
that.
group.
Yeah. Of course, we should have done that last time. Oh.
Otherwise, it's very interesting discussion. Thank you.
Now who's taking the picture?
Oh, actually, he's taking it.
Nobody's taking the
So we
picture.
have a professional here.
For those who aren't quite so height challenged as the rest of us.
I think we should shut down this.
Who's going to take it?
Harry is softly.
They show a picture and you go, picture. ERM one. That was even a good idea.
Where is Helen?
But we can do like that.
Yeah, no, I've realised. I'm completely technophobic. I'm terrible.
We can go a little bit in front.
Technology.
Do you want to put a background on? Do you want to project a background, one of your lovely slides?
Well, that's in the faces.
Yeah, that'll be on our faces.
Oh, yeah.
There's multiple of us.
If we move the table.
So if we move forward, you won't be, will you?
Yes.
That's better.
Move the table.
Oh, Jackie.
Ah.
That's mine.
First a photo
For me, thank you.
Tell me when we should smile.
Smile.
Now.
Okay? How's the
No, the proper one, yes, exactly, the more professional one. Okay. The other one's going on the Epicare website.
So guys, it's so silent.
Not talking about having a photograph.
It's always like that.
No, I'm not taking a photo yet. I'm just checking.
You asked for about half an hour to check the lights.
Yes, exactly, mine was more straightforward, yeah.
I need the people in the sides to move a bit closer.
Squeeze in.
Squeeze in.
Okay, smile. One more time. Good. Thank you.
Okay, now breathe. So thank you so much. Let's applaud everyone because I think it was really fun. Thank you very much. And I'm deeply grateful to you guys that everyone is very busy, and I know that you spent the whole day here with us. And yeah, I hope this will be also good for our regulation, and we will manage to go forward. We will actually get the, I don't know if there is any I don't know, questionnaire for transition. Helen, you said that there is a questionnaire.
There will be a questionnaire circulated. It is an agreement at the moment, I think, so I'm not sure where it's at. I'm going to chase it up because we have our teleconference in November and I don't think anything's happened since then. So I will chase up that.
We did some questionnaire on transition which we wanted to circulate in European, East European,
yes.
But I think it would be nice to circulate with, in the CNA maybe,
yes.
But also
more globally.
Yeah.
I'll screen the where it's got to.
Yeah, I think what I fear is when we have there will be questions.
No, but Rima has done the questionnaire within, not within Epicare, it's within the transition.